Oh my goodness. Good morning, good afternoon. Whatever it is for you, I hope you're having a fantastic day. My name is Zach Schomler. This is Strong Opinion Sports, episode 655. Welcome in. Joining me today is my co-host, Nathan Hawthorne. Nathan, how are you?
I'm doing great. I just had a wonderful dinner with my fiance. I'm feeling fresh. I'm feeling fueled. I'm feeling ready. Let's get after it.
It's amazing. We're at very similar stages of our life. Like, I'm not engaged yet, but like I just had dinner with my lady too, and it's
Coming soon.
yeah. She knows that. I know that. Everyone knows that. It's not a secret. Life's good, man. I just had dinner with her. I get the feeling. Like, it's like in fact, you said, "Hey, can we move back 15 minutes?" And it's like, yeah, of course. Like, enjoy time with your future wife. Like let life happen. And I want to be like Bruce Arians. Remember the old Cardinals and Buccaneers head coach? Where he's like, let people enjoy their life outside of the stupid things we do that make money and stuff.
Yeah, our time on this earth is finite, not to get into a rant, but our time on this earth is finite. And it's our responsibility to spend that time with the people that we love. So shout out to my fiance. I love you. And let's get this show started.
Talking about people we love, I've got a great amount of love for David Douglas High School. And I am no longer the offensive coordinator at David Douglas High School. I got fired for things I said about the former head coach on this podcast. I own what I said. I take accountability for it. It's painful, like what happened. I'm disappointed. My feelings were hurt. And for me, I'm sad because I just think that school has so much talent. And I think the kids are like worthy of a state championship, like genuinely. I really, really believe in the kids there and the community. And I wanted to be a part of helping them win. And I don't have much more to say. I don't want to add fuel to the fire. I want to just peacefully walk away. I'm disappointed. I wish them the best. And I want the audience to know, like, I'm never going to talk about this again. Probably. I don't want to add any fuel to the fire. I just want to walk away and kind of let it be. But truly, like, I hope their decision making works out for them. And I really hope that they have a great season, and I hope they win. Like, I actually authentically just want to see that area win. And yeah, that's all I have to say. I wish them the best.
Wish them the best.
I guess let's move in. We're going to do an ad read. We got two of them back to back. We've never done an ad read together. And so usually the show ends and then it's like 2 a.m. and I just record them in like 5 minutes by myself. Let's read them together this time. We've got two sponsors today. And we'll start with Factor. Nathan, did you know that Factor Meal Kits is offering listeners of this show 50% off? They're giving people half off of their meal kits. You know what Factor is?
I do not know what Factor is, but it sounds like I need to know.
Factor is a meal kit service. They send you ready-to-eat meals. They're easy to prepare. They show up in a box. You put the meal kits in the fridge. When you want the food, you go to the fridge, you pick up the food, you heat it up. About 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes later, you got ready-to-eat restaurant-quality meals. You go to factormeals.com/SOS50 and use code SOS50 to get 50% off your first box. And then you get 20% off your next box. So that's code SOS50 at factormeals.com/SOS50 to get 50% off your first box and then 20% off your next box while your subscription is active. Now, Nathan, here's what I like. They've got never frozen ingredients. They're high quality stuff. And compared to all the other options for a quick and easy meal, going to a fast food place or, so many TV dinners, this is like the best way to get a meal quickly that's good for you. And what you may not know, Nathan, I don't know your dietary restrictions, but if you're trying to cut calories or you're vegan or you are vegetarian, they've got an option for every single kind of diet you could possibly be looking for. Maybe you're like me and you're just really busy and you don't want a meal that takes 30 minutes to an hour to prepare. Bam, guess what? Factor is going to send you meals ready to go. They're in your fridge. For me, when I'm really busy, this is exactly what works for my lifestyle. You save a lot of time. Again, with code SOS50 at SOS50, you get 50% off your first box. So factormeals.com/SOS50 to get 50% off your first box and then 20% off your next box while your subscription is active. Nathan, it's a great deal.
I tell you what, I'm about to do it right now. My fiance and I, we just had a pretty late dinner, right? how easy would it have been before she went to her workout class, before I finished up my prep, if we could have just popped in a few of those meals and got ourselves ready for the rest of the evening? I'm telling you, having those pre-made meals is an absolute game changer.
Oh yeah, dude. Now, I live pretty far from an MLB stadium. It's about 2.5 hours to get to Seattle on a good day with good traffic. I love a good Mariners game. To me, the absolute best thing to do during the summer is go watch an MLB game. You get a cold drink, a hot dog, your friends. Now, I live far. You live fairly close to the Giants Stadium in San Francisco. Would you go to a baseball game? Does that sound fun to you?
Oh, yeah. Baseball games are a staple here in the San Francisco area. You've got the Oakland A's as well, just across the other side of the bay. You've got the
For now.
Niners just a little bit further south for now. And then you've even got the Warriors for basketball season. Do they do concerts as well on the Game Time app?
Yeah, so the Game Tab app is going to make getting tickets faster and easier because we love going to MLB games, love going to concerts. Prices on the Game Tab actually go down on the app the closer it gets to the start of any event. So they've got killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and a lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. And again, concerts, comedy, theater, sports, everything you can imagine getting getting a ticket for. And Nathan, here's where they really have your back. They've got flash deals where you can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. Then they got zone deals where you can save even more when you just choose a selection or a section of the venue and let Game Time choose the seats for you. They've got all-in prices where toggling that feature will show the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. On the app, they've got seat views where you can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you make your purchase. And Game Time has a lowest price guarantee, meaning that Game Time is either going to give you the lowest price or credit you 110% of the difference. And on top of all of that, Game Time has ticket coverage where your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Nathan, you download the Game Time app, you create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account on the Game Time app, redeem with the code CLNS to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
How easy is that? And how many times are you thinking, oh man, you're talking to my buddy, hey Zach, you want to go to the Giants game this weekend? Oh man, I don't really know. Tickets, like, it's last minute, let's send it. Like we're talking about, these prices get lower as you get closer to the event for those last minute sins, whether that's comedy, whether that's MLB, whether that's NFL, whether that is any sort of concert, just something you want to enjoy and you're looking to take some friends last minute. Use the Game Time app, use the code, you will not regret it.
Let's do a little film study, Nathan. How did that go? I think we're gonna get better as time goes on, like how to do an ad read together. It's weird because I have the ad read in front of me.
I
You
think
do
so.
not. You're reacting to what I say. I thought for a first take on the fly, we literally did all in one go. Could have been
Winging it.
worse. That was all right.
I give that a solid 7 out of 10. I feel good about it. Like you said, I had no notes in front of me. I'm listening to what you say and I'm shooting from the hip. So I feel pretty good about it.
So I intentionally wanted the ad read to kind of create distance from what I said. But Nathan, you've known me for what, 12, 13 years, since high school, right?
Yep.
And I consider, I've learned people I thought were my friends. Maybe I have to reevaluate relationships. And I no longer trust relationships that I thought I was friendly with, that it's really painful to me. And so Nathan, all I ask is if you and I ever have a problem, we work together, we do podcasts together, we played football together, we trained together. Like we had this relationship that I've had with other people as well. If you ever have a problem with me, talk to me. Let's have a conversation. That's all I ask. I don't care if the conversation goes poorly or not the way that everyone wants, or maybe not the way I want. But all I ask is if you ever have a problem with anything I do, Nathan, and this is coded language, please have a conversation with me, for God's sake. That's all I ask. Can you do that?
I can do that. And I'll tell you here's why. Because I am an adult and I am an effective communicator. And in order to operate in this world, you have to be able to communicate effectively, even when situations are uncomfortable. So if that's not something you're great at, it might be something that you need to look at growing in. Effective communication is great for your relationships. It's great for your career. And it overall it's going to enhance your life when you can communicate things on an adult and higher level. So keep that in mind.
I also think I really believe in taking accountability for your shortcomings. So, look, when I'm wrong, I try to admit it and take accountability. And I just think that applies everywhere. Everyone should do that. Is if you're coming up short in your area, accountability is important. So, here's the plan for today: predictions versus reality. And then our expectations for these teams, not predictions, kind of expectations, kind of the early conversation leading towards a couple weeks from now when you really sit down and pick numbers and do full on predictions for teams. But today we're talking about the eastern side of the country, the AFC and NFC East predictions versus reality. Can we start with the team that I think was the hardest to predict their season on? Actually, I think this is the one team that you're like, I don't know how if anyone got the prediction right for this season, I want to meet you like so badly. Do you want to start with that team?
Yes. And can I quickly say how excited I am for football? I know it was just preseason football last weekend, but man, it got me so juiced. So let's get into it. What's the team?
Actually, if you want, we could hang on this for a second because we watched a lot of rookie quarterbacks play incredibly well. Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, JJ McCarthy, and I think we're seeing the NFL really figure out how to handle rookie quarterbacks, both with the way they're preparing them and the situations they're putting them in early in their careers. They're not throwing them to the wolves. But then also it's paired with quarterbacks are more prepared than we've ever seen before. It's really cool to see guys coming into the NFL kind of ready to go. It's really impressive to me. Was that kind of your takeaway from the couple preseason games we saw? Because I felt like every rookie quarterback played outstanding football for their first NFL reps.
I was impressed. With what I saw from this rookie class. Really gets me excited for the year.
I don't like the guy that Caleb Williams is going to have a ton of attention. He's going to be incredible. I think he really is going to be the best quarterback in Bears history.
Oh man,
ton of weapons around him.
I know I keep knocking you for saying that the Bears are going to be the most interesting team, and every team has an interesting game against the Bears. But that ball, when Caleb Williams was rolling out to the right, and he throws it across his body, but on a rope to the sideline. Oh my goodness, are you kidding me? That was insane. When I talk about getting excited, that's what I'm excited for, especially in Chicago.
Dude, I will say what wasn't interesting about Caleb Williams and the Bears was Hard Knocks. It was episode 1 of Hard Knocks kind of came and went. I know episode 2 is like tonight. I'll probably watch it after we record this, but I was kind of like, okay, episode 1, we'll see if it gets better. I found it kind of boring, kind of mid. I don't know if you watched it, but I was like,
Yeah, I feel like usually in episode 1, Hard Knocks has been great about like setting that hook in and getting you to fall in love with somebody. And I know that a lot of it was focused on Caleb Williams and the draft and everything that kind of led up to it. But because so much of that has already been, publicly broadcasted, I don't think anybody was taken by surprise. And I think that's maybe why episode 1 was meh. So I'm excited to see episode 2, having now had the preseason game and, just another week of practice.
Well, even though for my girlfriend Molly, who isn't familiar with Caleb Williams, I thought they didn't. Usually Hard Knocks finds the one story, the one angle that you're like, oh, this guy faced adversity in this moment. And like, I really love the Dolphins Hard Knocks, and Mike McDaniel's talked about overcoming alcoholism and his journey back to the NFL. Like, that's compelling. And it made my girlfriend, she like loves Mike McDaniel forever. There was between,
same
Matt Eberflus with the beard and Caleb Williams, there wasn't a storyline in Hard Knocks episode 1 that was like super compelling and made you just fall in love with the person. I was waiting. I thought maybe they would do, hey, the former Shepherd quarterback, I'm blanking on the name right now, their backup quarterback in Chicago. Like, that's a great story. Yeah, Tyson Bagent. I'm like, that's a storyline, and they didn't even tell that story. I'm like, man, I'm just waiting for. I hope episode 2 has more of that we didn't see in episode 1.
And real quick, I know we're trying to get into this, but I think summer/spring Matt Eberflus, man, what an upgrade from winter cold Chicago sideline Matt Eberflus. You know what I mean? Like, I had this view of him as really rough around the edges, but my guy looks sharp. Like, the shout out to the makeup crew from HBO. They got that guy looking great.
Well, I think it's a reminder that presentation is everything. I mean, it really, maybe not everything, but it really matters. I mean, think of how many times we saw Bill Belichick on the sideline, the hoodie, the slouch, like the bad posture. Like, that doesn't win you any fans.
No.
And certainly Matt Eberflus, like, I know for a fact, like Molly's mom is like, oh, Matt Eberflus, like, oh, look at that handsome, like silver fox, like for real. Like, and he just ingratiates himself to more people by looking the part. Like when you saw him without the beard before, a different haircut, no beard, like he just looks like an old guy coaching. And you're like, like there's nothing compelling there. It's funny how literally, I know it's so trivial, but like it's true. Like the beard and the haircut. Wow, that's a different coach. You're like, hey,
Yeah.
what's up,
And
Matt?
I'll tell you what, I bet those bags under the eyes are a lot lighter now that he has Caleb Williams back there at quarterback. That pressure. I mean, the middle of that. All right, never mind. Let's get into it. Matt Eberflus, good looking fella.
The last thing I want to say. So again, the reason I brought up Caleb Williams, we know he's going to be awesome, and I thought JJ McCarthy he's got a knee thing. We don't really know details on the injury yet, so I don't want to report on it very much because we're kind of just waiting for details. I do want to say JJ McCarthy made an incredible throw. Like as he got hit, stepping into pressure, taking the shot, throwing it really accurately. But the guy that I think is getting no conversation or respect, like everyone talks about Drake May, Joe Milton, like the guy quietly doing really well that is going to be really exciting for me to watch this year is Jaden Daniels in Washington. Such a talented player. And it's like, did you watch how he played? Like they did this, like, I forget what the play was, but like an RPO touchdown run, and he had a nice ball down the sideline for a huge, like 42-yard gain on third down. I mean, he looks really talented, and talent with the right coaching is going to be incredible.
I'll tell you the best part about that big bomb that he hit down the right sideline is Dan Quinn was in an interview this week. I can't remember if it was post game or Monday, and they're asking him about that play, and Dan Quinn was essentially saying that was not the play. He said, "I'm going to check to this." We said no. He said, "I'm going to do it anyways." Checks to it, completes the ball. That's what you want to see, is the confidence of a young quarterback to see what's in front of him, say, no. I like this, and I like this matchup. I'm going to go to it. You know, one of those ask for forgiveness later kind of things. That's what excites me about Jaden Daniels, is he's already got that confidence and that swagger to be like, nah, let me change up the play here. Really cool.
Oh, I love it, man. Now, we kind of hooked people, and then we didn't finish the thought. To me, this is the team that was the hardest to get the prediction right on. Here is what I said about the New York Jets going into the 2023 NFL season. I have the New York Jets going 10-7. Here's one thing that really concerns me. Of all the teams in the NFL this year, no one has a harder start to the year than the New York Jets. I think it's tough because the AFC is loaded. They've got a brutal start. And unlike a lot of the other teams around them in the AFC, they got a lot of new guys that got to get on the same page very quickly, and no opportunity to do that. There's no easy start to the year. From day one, they got to be firing on all cylinders, and I think that's just a lot to ask of the Jets. So I have the Jets going 10-7. It's a good year. I wouldn't say it's disappointing if they miss the playoffs. It's realistic. And ultimately, the Jets are building towards a Super Bowl run, not this year, but next year. All right, Nathan. I predicted the Jets would go 10-7. I was nervous about their offensive line. I was kind of questionable. Are they a playoff team? Are they not? I ended up last minute changing my prediction, saying, no, they're not a playoff team. They had a tough start. Buffalo, Dallas, New England, Kansas City, Denver, Philly. I was like, hey, these are really good teams. I'm not sure what to make of the offensive line. And it's year one with Aaron Rodgers. Now, all of this ended up being kind of a moot point because the reality was they went 7-10. So I was 3 wins off. However, 4 plays into the Aaron Rodgers era, he tore his Achilles out for the year. It's like, I'm not going to lie, dude. 7-10 without Aaron Rodgers is actually kind of incredible. I'm like, man, imagine if they had actually had their quarterback, how good they could have been. What do you make of the Jets season last year?
Man, I don't want to say another one of those seasons that kind of turned out to be a wash, but that's really what it was. You lost Aaron Rodgers. The hope was, okay, maybe Zach Wilson had learned a little bit from Aaron. Maybe with Aaron on the sidelines, Zach can play a little bit better. At the end of the day, the Jets just didn't have enough quality quarterback play. That defense played lights out and kept them in so many games. But what it came down to was an inability to deliver the football. I thought Breece Hall had a solid year, kind of coming back from injury. We could tell maybe he wasn't 100% the Breece Hall of old, but I'd be excited for him this year. And again, like just looking at last year, when you lose a guy like Aaron Rodgers and you invested so much in him, really hurts to see.
In a weird way, the guy who lost the most is Zach Wilson. I mean, Zach Wilson, I think sitting for 2 years behind Aaron Rodgers is a really interesting quarterback, but he sat for 4 plays and never didn't get a chance to learn anything. And I really wonder, like in an alternate reality, Aaron Rodgers has been the quarterback all year last year and this year. Does that lead to a Jordan Love style resurgence of Zach Wilson's career where he sat, he learned, he's better and becomes a franchise quarterback once again? Like the butterfly effect from Aaron Rodgers' injury is so massive. And one of the casualties, again, is Zach Wilson. By not having time to sit and develop, we saw him a lot, and it was really raw. He had 8 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, played in 12 games. And Jets fans never want to see Zach Wilson play football ever again. And it's like, I really wonder if he'd had time, 2 years to sit, could he have developed? And we'll never know.
I wonder that, and had the offensive coordinator perhaps been different. I know that Nat Hackett can be a hot button topic for Jets fans. So if we had someone else back there, more of a quarterback whisperer, if there would have been a chance to see something a little bit different from him, who knows?
Well, let's acknowledge the elephant in the room. Nathaniel Hackett is there because he's buddies with Aaron Rodgers. He's not there because he's some great offensive coordinator who he's done a great job coaching in the past. He's there because Aaron Rodgers likes him. And that's the truth. What I want to really point out, the Jets are the 3rd best defense in the NFL and the 2nd worst offense in the NFL. It could not be more apparent. Quarterback limited this football team. Their quarterbacks last year, Trevor Siemian for 5 games, Tim Boyle for 3, Zach Wilson for 12 games. It's hard to go 7-10 with those 3 quarterbacks, and they did. In fact, this is a team, they lost to the Super Bowl champs, Kansas City, 23-20 with Zach Wilson at quarterback. To me, that's actually very impressive. I walk away like, I think Robert Saleh, the head coach of the Jets, gets a lot of hate and a lot of flack. Every year his defense shows up to play. He's just never had the right quarterback situation or offensive situation. I really like Robert Saleh, and I wish he could have had a good quarterback last year because I think that was the year for him to show the world that he can do, and I'm still hoping this year can be.
I'm actually a big Robert Saleh fan. I think he has done an incredible job, especially with the defense. Again, we just talked about it. A 3rd-ranked defense in the league is incredible. He coaches guys up. He gets guys to play at an extremely high level, playing high effort and high assignment football, which on the defensive end is all you can ask. Now, some of his problems have kind of been, I don't know what to call it, like self-imposed in terms of him and the GM, Joe Douglas, drafting Zach Wilson. You do your best to amend it by somewhat selling the farm to get Aaron Rodgers. He gets injured before he can really even make an impact. Now this guy that you've pulled and replaced has to go back in as a starter. You've got actual backups who didn't turn out to be great and couldn't really win games for you. That was tough to see. You go out and beef up your defensive line, getting Hassan Reddick. Now he is holding out because he wants a new contract, and they're not. It's just every single offseason, it seems like there's just a lot of noise and chatter from the Jets. And I think that he has done such an incredible job of stepping up to the podium every single time. And to me, saying the right thing and trying to be the best advocate that he can and protect his players. That to me, I think is why that defense plays so hard for him. And that's why I think and I hope that with Aaron Rodgers, the offense will play at least a tiny bit better this year, if not astronomically better.
I agree in that I love Robert Saleh. The unfortunate reality of him, we have to acknowledge, he's a defensive head coach. And it's become very clear he can't develop a young quarterback. Like he should not do that. He's going to need a veteran quarterback no matter what. When Aaron Rodgers is done with the Jets, their next quarterback, if Robert Saleh is still around for that, has got to be someone like Baker Mayfield, which I think would be actually like a really fun pairing. Can you imagine Baker Mayfield with Robert Saleh as head coach? 2 fiery guys, a lot of passion, but it's got to be someone who's an established starter. It can't be a rookie quarterback you draft in the first round because he made it very clear with Zach Wilson. He's not a coach who can develop a young quarterback. And it's unfortunate, but that's honestly what I saw.
Yeah, can't develop. And that's one of 2 ways to go, right? Either you get yourself a veteran or you bring in a quarterback whisperer. and somebody who can come in and help out that young guy develop. And even if you have a veteran, you still have to have a coach in there who's on the same page, X's and O's wise, right?
You cringed at my idea. You don't like the idea of like Baker Mayfield and Robert Sala working
No,
together, dude. That sounds
no.
incredible, man.
Could you imagine Baker at the podium with a New York media? Oh my goodness. It'd be entertaining, no doubt about that. But I don't think that would benefit anybody in New York.
Think of how close we were to that happening. If the Browns take Sam Darnold #1 overall, Baker Mayfield would have been that pick. Like that almost happened.
That's insane to think about. I didn't even realize that.
I want that so badly. Like I want to cover the Jets, quarterback by Baker Mayfield. That'd be so much fun. I think that would be just like a treat to watch happen. The insanity, the chaos of it all. Anyway, one guy who deserves credit is Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson had 95 catches, over 1,000 yards receiving last year, 3 touchdown catches. I don't know, man. I just think the problem with the Jets last year, no quarterback. It's a team that threw 11 touchdown passes and threw 15 interceptions. Like whenever your quarterback plays that bad. In fact, it's actually impressive the defense was as good as it was given they had no run support. I mean, I really think like when you frame everything around not having a quarterback, 7-10 are the third best defense in football is unbelievable.
It was incredible. And like you said, they had some excellent offensive pieces, Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. I think Michael Carter. I know they had a little bit of a tough time last year finding a way to utilize him, and there was some frustration around that. But he's another talented guy. You have Tyler Conklin, the tight end, who's a big physical cat who can catch the football. Things just, they really, really, really needed a quarterback to make that offense go, and they needed it probably worse than anybody else in the league. Not to mention the O-line just kind of being very average, maybe even slightly below average at best. That doesn't help these young quarterbacks who, I guess Boyle's not a young quarterback. That didn't help these backup quarterbacks. It's not like you're playing behind the best O-line in the league here. Like you got to go out there and scrap and fight for it.
I will say, and we can talk about the Jets this year now because, I mean, look, the prediction, the reality of it all, it's a bust with the quarterback injury. The Jets are trying on the offensive line. They brought in Morgan Moses, Joe Tippmann, Tyron Smith. Like they're really trying on the offensive line to make changes and make it better. I personally like have a hard time looking at last year and not getting excited about this year because given how competent they were, 7-10, a great defense, they were a quarterback away, and now they have their quarterback. I really think I don't want to get sold, fool's gold again. I really want to be measured on this, but I have a hard time not going like, oh man, like the Bills are down. The Dolphins are probably the team to beat in the division, but the Patriots aren't doing anything. Like to me, it's Miami or the Jets this year in that division. And I think the Jets are like under the radar, really good.
I don't even think it's under the radar. I just think that knowing that you have what is going to be a top 5 defense at the worst, right?
Yeah.
You're bringing back a lot of the same guys. You were able to snag Kinlaw from the 49ers to help your front 7. You've still got Sauce on the back end. Maybe you've got Hassan Reddick. We're not really sure how he's gonna or if he's gonna show up and play. That's something that remains to be seen. But again, on the offensive side, you've got Aaron Rodgers coming back. You picked up Mike Williams from the Chargers on the low, who, if he can stay healthy, he's a big time threat. Of course, you've got Garrett Wilson, you've got Breece Hall. You drafted an absolute monster of a running back, Braylon Allen, out of Wisconsin. I mean, their offense with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback has potential to complement this incredible defense. Again, I'm not sure what version of Aaron we're going to see. The last time we saw him in Green Bay wasn't great. He's now been like a year and a half, kind of closing in on 2 years really without playing some meaningful snaps. How is Aaron Rodgers going to come back? And I know that he's a veteran. I know that he's seen so many different plays and live bullets, but he's going to need to get going quick. I think they've got a decent start to the year. I know that they play the Niners right off rip, which will be very, very interesting. But they've got some wins early on the schedule, and I'm curious to see how they make it through that middle part of the season. Having New England twice helps your schedule. I think this team could be very, very interesting.
They're going to get challenged week 1 at San Francisco. But that's a 49ers team that may not have Christian McCaffrey. that may not have Brandon Ayuk. Like, there's a lot of question marks still about the 49ers and what they're going to look like week one. I have a really hard time doubting Aaron Rodgers. It seems,
It's hard to.
man, like, how can you? I think a guy who's done it for that long, who is that good, doesn't need a lot of time off or doesn't need a lot of time back to really settle in. Like, I think he's a guy who can get away with taking literally a year off and come back and be incredible. I mean, I
Yeah.
have such a hard time doubting Aaron Rodgers and his preparation level, his expertise. And then you look at their schedule after the 49ers, then it's Tennessee, New England, Denver, Minnesota, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, New England again, Houston, Arizona, Indy. Like, these are so many winnable games, especially if they're any good. And I think the Jets are actually pretty good. So you're like, man, like, is New England going to challenge the Jets? Not a chance. Minnesota, maybe. Buffalo is going to be a good game. I actually think early on, like, their toughest game is by a mile, the 49ers. And then after that, it's nothing until week 9 against Houston.
Yeah, I think Buffalo will probably give them a run just because it's in division. Anytime you play somebody in division, those are typically tough games. You see them twice a year. You see them year after year, unlike the other teams. That'll be an interesting game as well. Luckily, they have them at home.
Think back to week 1 last year. Remember when Aaron Rodgers got hurt? That was week 1 against the Buffalo Bills. They won in overtime with Zach Wilson playing quarterback that second half. All but 4 snaps of that game, basically. So I think the Jets, without Aaron Rodgers, beat Buffalo last year. I can't imagine. And the Bills are worse. The Jets are better. I think the gap between the Jets and the Bills got wider, not closer. So I think the Jets are a much better team than Buffalo, like, straight up.
I think the gap got different. I don't know. I don't know about wider, but certainly got different.
And then, you look at the rest of their schedule. So Miami's tough. They play Miami twice. They play the Rams. That's a good team. The Jaguars. But other than, like, the couple tough games they have, I think the 49ers, Pittsburgh's interesting because Pittsburgh has a good defense and they're not going to be awful. Pittsburgh's a mediocre team, but still not an easy win. Houston, Jacksonville, Miami, the Rams. Anytime you play Buffalo, that's at least interesting. Outside of that, there's a lot of winnable games here, man. And I think the Jets are, without counting it out, how many wins, how many losses, like, they're a playoff team, I think, really easily, in my opinion, with the New York Jets. Now, I'm so terrified to say that because all the Jets fans I know have been burned so many times. But do you think my instinct is right here?
I think it is, and I want it to be true so bad for them, and more importantly for Garrett Wilson. I think that he's a dog. He's endured a tough couple of years. This is his time.
Yeah. Let's talk about Buffalo. Here's what I said about the Bills going into the 2023 NFL season. The Bills, in my opinion, are going to go 12-5. I am worried about the Bills' long-term future. They got to pay everybody. I think this could be the last year of the Super Bowl window with the current roster they have, the current core of players they have. Guys are getting older. Some guys want to get paid more. They've got quarterback Josh Allen. They've got Stephon Diggs at receiver. The player to watch, in my opinion, is the rookie tight end first-round pick, Dalton Kincaid out of Utah. This dude was an absolute monster at Utah in college. I think he's potentially like a George Kittle type receiver at tight end. Another guy to pay attention to is young defensive end Greg Rousseau. He was a first-round pick in 2021. He's going into year 3. It's time to step up. Greg Rousseau, come on, man. Like, we're waiting. You got to deliver. You got to step up and become a big playmaker, get after opposing quarterbacks. They've invested a lot in this defensive line in Buffalo, and frankly, other than Von Miller, we've kind of been waiting and waiting. There's a reason why they brought in Leonard Floyd this offseason, but I have Buffalo going 12-5 and first in the AFC East. So I predicted the Buffalo Bills would go 12-5. I had them winning their division. The defensive line was kind of a question mark, but I was excited about Dalton Kincaid, their rookie tight end. To me, though, I said very clearly, this is the final year of their Super Bowl window with the core group of players they had. And that, I think, ultimately ended up being right. We saw Stephon Diggs leave. We saw other people leave in free agency and guys kind of age out and veterans move on. The reality of the Bills, they went 11-6. They did win their division, but they came up short. And I guess before we get into the details, what do you make, from 1,000 feet up, or I guess 10,000 feet up is really the phrase there. What do you make of the Bills from a big wide shot?
Yeah, I think last year you kind of got it right as far as like this was going to be the last year of kind of a lot of those core pieces being together. And we saw that happen at the end of this offseason there. Defense unloaded some older, expensive guys. The offense obviously let go of Stephon Diggs. Um, they closed the season strong for what it was worth,
Yeah.
albeit it wasn't where they wanted to be, which was, AFC Championship and eventually a Super Bowl. Um, I'll tell you what, I was really, really out on this Buffalo team, but the more I started to look, the more I started to find a little bit of confidence in them for this last year. Um, I know that losing Stephon Diggs is big. I'm not sure how much worse it's actually going to make them, and we'll get into that. But yeah, I think you nailed it. Also, Dalton Kincaid, I think he's listed as their starter right now on their depth chart. He ended up being electric for them, really kind of came on late in that season too, when Joe Brady started to be the offensive coordinator. Really excited for him in year two, which is going to be awesome. And I think Gregory Rousseau, another guy that you mentioned, a guy like needing him to kind of step up. I think on that defensive side of the football, he started to step up this year.
I'm not gonna lie. I found myself, just from a numbers standpoint, disappointed in Gregory Rousseau. Ed Oliver had 9.5 sacks. Leonard Floyd led the team with 10.5. Von Miller had, Von Miller even admitted like he probably shouldn't have played last year. He just was coming off a really bad, torn ACL and had 0 sacks and wasn't quite himself. In fact, I'm surprised Von Miller's still on the team, given that they moved on from other expensive names. But
That surprised me.
I think Greg Rousseau's lack of production actually is why they kept Von Miller on the roster. They're hoping he can provide another good year and help the kid develop. He had 5 sacks last year, Greg Rousseau. That's a former first round pick who, I don't know, anytime you're picking late in the first round, it's more like a second round pick. We've talked about that. A late first round pick is more second round talent that's overpaid and going to get a 5th year option. But I'm personally not that impressed with Greg Rousseau's development, specifically from a sack production number. I mean, maybe that's unfair to reduce him down to a number, but I've been waiting and waiting for him to put up big numbers, and it hasn't happened. The one thing about the year last year, they fired Ken Dorsey, with 7 games left in the year. They won their final 5 games. They were 6-1 after firing Ken Dorsey, the offensive coordinator, making Joe Brady. And remember, Joe Brady was the passing game coordinator of the LSU team that destroyed everyone with Joe Burrow. So Joe Brady's no slouch when it comes to coaching quarterbacks. But the thing that really stands out to me about this team is not only that Josh Allen, had 29 touchdown passes and 18 interceptions, but he ran for 15 touchdowns. Like his ability to use his legs, and he's got to continue that trend. He's got to be a weapon on the edge. Boot action with Josh Allen is kind of like putting Cam Newton on the perimeter, man. I really challenge anyone that tackled Josh Allen. I would not want to do it. I think most guys in the NFL wouldn't want to do that either. He's a tough guy to take down, and 3rd and 1 should be boot action every time, where you fake the run, you get Josh Allen on the perimeter where he can run or throw. He's unstoppable in that situation. On 3rd and short, getting him on the perimeter is crazy. I love Josh Allen a lot. He's really, really gotten better and better and better every year. And I think the coaching change, it's surprising to me that they had to fire Ken Dorsey, given Ken Dorsey's a former quarterback and they'd worked together in the past. But I guess I'm curious, man, what stands out to you about the offense and firing Ken Dorsey?
I think what stands out is just maybe needing a change of voice in that offense. Everything was so Josh Allen throwing to Stephon Diggs dependent. And while there was a lot of production, maybe it wasn't the right way to try and win football games. I thought what you saw with the transition from Ken Dorsey to, Joe Brady was a philosophy more centered around the run game, taking a little bit of pressure off of Josh Allen to be a runner, right? We saw James Cook really come on at the end of last season. And again, take that pressure off of Josh Allen and allow him to run when necessary on those 3rd downs, right? To go ahead and make those plays to keep the chains moving, but also allowed him to spread the ball around a little bit more. Again, we saw Kincaid get involved a lot more later in the season. Of course, you still have Dawson Knox as a tight end. We saw more 2 tight end sets, again, when you're running that football. So that's really what we saw. And that was the difference. It was less throw the ball to Stephon Diggs and more let's be an offense together. So when I was talking about how much does losing Stephon Diggs actually hurt you as an offense, I'm not sure how much it's actually going to hurt. And this was, I know last episode I said, oh, I'm so out on the Bills. But they've got Josh Allen. They got James Cook coming back. They drafted Keon Coleman. You got Curtis Samuel from the Commanders. You got Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. I think that's an excellent offensive core. And again, if the focus is going to be the run game, and again, you got James Cook, that makes me feel pretty good. And if your number one wide receiver ends up being Keon Coleman, great. If your number one wide receiver ends up being like Kansas City and it turns out to be Travis Kelce or a George Kittle type deal, right? Then you're going to love that as well. So I think their offense is set up more for success than perhaps we've given them credit for, especially this offseason. And Joe Brady is one of those in the moment play caller guys. And I think people have talked about that before. He can run it 50 times a game or he can throw it 50 times a game. And it's totally dependent on what he's feeling, what the team's feeling, what the opposing defense is feeling. But as long as you have Josh Allen on that team, I feel like I just can't say that Super Bowl window is closed. I know that last episode I said I was out on them, but doing a little bit of the prep, I'm like, man, like I think that this team could still be great.
You know, I really admire a coach who has a quarterback background and gets really into the run game. When I was hired as an offensive coordinator, and I'm designing an offense, and I thought we were going to be an air raid team early on. We had incredible receivers, and I thought we were going to run and run and run and run and run. Sorry, throw and throw and throw and throw. I thought we were going to throw a football like 50, 60 times a game. And the more I got into the weeds, the more I'm like, dude, our run game is going to be really fun. And I got really nerdy as I was coaching about the run game and about matchups and how to give offensive linemen good angles. And that's what they do in Buffalo. And you look at the hallmark moment for Joe Brady, I think is actually week 15. The Bills beat the Cowboys 31-10. And Josh Allen threw the ball 15 times. They ran and ran. James Cook had 25 carries for 179 yards. On the day, Buffalo had 49 carries. Now, some of those are quarterback kneel downs, 2 from Kyle Allen. Some of those are Josh Allen taken off. But man, like that's a dominating running performance over a really good Cowboys defense. And to me, as the cat says hello to the camera, to me, that game was really like the defining moment for Joe Brady. We were like, yeah, this guy can coach.
Yes, I think you're right about that. Like you said, Josh Allen only throwing the football 15 times. That's pretty impressive. And again, when you're beating the crap out of a team like the Cowboys, it makes me happy. It genuinely makes me happy.
Yeah, we'll talk about Dallas later. But as we look at the Bills' schedule this year, so you're raising your expectations a little bit about the Bills. You really like the offense they have. I concur. Dude, Keon Coleman is a kid that I love his personality. His skill set's incredible. Like that.
He's
People
hilarious.
often ask me, like, what's your dream wide receiver? It's Keon Coleman. I want a tall guy who's physical, who can go get the football. I'm sorry. I don't want to play with Wes Welker. I don't want to play with little tiny Julian Edelman guys. I want to play with a 6'5" wide receiver who's physical and goes to steal the ball from defenders. That's exactly what Keon Coleman is. In fact, that's what I think Chase Claypool could become if you ever learn how to be physical. Like I've been waiting for Chase Claypool to develop, and it's never happened. But Chase Claypool
that
has
big body he has,
dude. He's got the stereotypical build for what I want at receiver. Just Chase Claypool never developed. But you look at their schedule: Arizona, Miami, Jacksonville, Baltimore, Houston. Not a lot of like these games are not easy. At Baltimore is tough. At Houston, in 3 weeks, so they're in their first 6 games. They play at Miami, at Baltimore, at Houston, at the Jets. Like their first 4 of 6 games are on the road against playoff teams, and not to mention they play Jacksonville is going to be much better this year. Like then look later in their schedule, they play in a 4-game stretch. Kansas City, then they got a bye week. Then they play the 49ers, the Rams, and Detroit. Oh, and leading up to their bye week, they play Miami and then at Indy. Indy's not going to be bad. They got a better team this year with Anthony Richardson. Miami's no slouch. Like I look at the Bills' schedule and we're kind of teetering here. Like we like the roster more than we said last week, but the schedule is like really loaded actually with really good football teams. What do you make of their schedule?
I think the Bills beat good teams, and they have a history of doing that. Granted, playoffs haven't been evidence of that, since that AFC Championship games when they gave it up to the Chiefs. I think that they're fine against a lot of these teams. I think that they've certainly got the edge on Jacksonville. I think they've got the edge, maybe not the edge on Miami. I think they've got the edge on Houston for sure. New York will be more of a toss-up one to me. Indianapolis, I think they most certainly have the edge on, although it doesn't mean Indianapolis isn't capable of winning that football game. I just think you've still got some serious continuity between having Josh Allen on that team, having Sean McDermott as the head coach. I know that he's going to get that defense in playing shape. We just need to see how this offense is going to look for a full year with Joe Brady.
If they're not good this year, if the year goes south, is it Sean McDermott's final season as head coach in Buffalo? I think they just extended him. Let me look that up. But like, what would you do with Sean McDermott if they're not good this year?
That's actually a great question. To me, he's kind of like a Mike Tomlin guy. How do you fire him? You keep winning games. The stadium's full. You're selling out season tickets. How do you justify firing him because you can't win the Super Bowl? I don't know, because at what point do you look at it like, okay, we could fire Sean McDermott, but then who are we going to bring in? And I know that there might be a slew of coaching candidates, but how many are going to be better than Sean McDermott, who's proven that, yes, I can have my defensive side of the ball right, but I'm willing to give the reins to an offensive coordinator to help get the offense right under Josh Allen. I mean, and what's a bad year for the Bills is the question. Is it missing the playoffs? Is it losing in the wild card? Like, what are we going to classify as a bad year?
So the Bills have not succeeded in their goals year in and year out. They haven't made a Super Bowl. They keep losing in big games in the end of this year. To me, if they miss a playoff game, there's got to be a harsh response from Buffalo. They just extended Sean McDermott through 2027. The GM is awesome. To me, if you ask me truly, I think this is a Mike McCarthy situation where you got a coach who isn't getting it done in big situations. You can call me crazy, but I'm like, man, I've been waiting and waiting. And can you imagine if they'd had the wisdom and aggressiveness to, after the year ends last year, they lose in the playoffs, if they'd went and hired Jim Harbaugh? Jim Harbaugh coaching the Bills is a really interesting conversation. And they didn't do that. And you're right. I don't know who they replace Sean McDermott with, but part of that's because they're not aggressive enough to go get the true next level coach you need to get over the hump. I know that's cliche, but it's also honest. Like, you got a defensive head coach coaching a quarterback that I think needs an offensive head coach, and you're wasting the best years of your young quarterback. And that's a shame, dude. Like that's almost unforgivable.
Yeah.
I just think you've got a coach who's got a limited ceiling and isn't getting it done. And I'd like to be wrong. I'm waiting and hoping to be wrong someday. But against Mike McDaniels and Andy Reid, is he ever going to outcoach either of those guys? I don't think so. And that's unfortunate, but honest.
I think it may end up being if it were to go south, I think it would be an actual mutually agreed to part ways. Typically, it is very one-sided, but we say mutually just to be kind to people. But if it were to go south, I do think that this would be a true mutual parting of ways. Sean McDermott saying, hey, I think my time is up here. The Bills saying, yeah, we think so too. Why don't we go our separate ways? Maybe Joe Brady gets promoted. I don't know what the situation looks like. It's just hard to win this. It's just hard to win a Super Bowl when Patrick Mahomes is in your division.
Well, and maybe Joe Brady is exactly what they needed, an offensive coordinator. I mean, when I was my brief stint as an offensive coordinator, right? I literally would tell my head coach all the time, I don't want your job. Like, I'm not going to be head coach. I have no interest in that. I also don't have that skill set to do all the coordination it takes to be a head coach. Maybe Joe Brady has the foresight to realize that, and maybe it's a perfect pairing. And I hope that's what happens. I would love that to be true. But it may not be. And you look around the AFC, I think the best teams in the AFC right now are Kansas City, Baltimore, and Miami. I think the best coaches in the AFC are Mike McDaniel and Andy Reid in Kansas City and Miami. And then you look at after those top three, then it's Buffalo, Cincinnati, probably. I don't know. I wonder. I think the Chargers are going to be in that conversation soon with Jim Harbaugh. They're not there yet, but they will be eventually. The Browns are up there. They're the second tier of the AFC right now. What's it going to take the Bills to the top tier of the AFC? It's better coaching. And I don't care how you solve that problem. Maybe it is Joe Brady as offensive coordinator makes a difference. And then maybe he's happy and doesn't want the responsibility of head coach and they just ride that out for a long time. But something at some point has to change. And Buffalo keeps running into a ceiling and not going any farther than, the divisional round or the conference title game. And that's a problem to me.
Yes, I think it certainly is a problem again when you have a guy as talented as Josh Allen is to not make it to the Super Bowl, to have crumbled in 13 seconds to Kansas City. Again, I don't know what that change is going to be, but history tells us the coach goes before the quarterback.
Oh, certainly. Well, the quarterback isn't the problem. There's just no way. It's not Josh Allen's fault that they're not getting it done at the end of the year, in my opinion. Well, no, I think you have to take accountability as a coach. If your players aren't getting it done, who's to blame? It's the coach not putting up players in good enough position. If your team goes, I'm not going to say it. If your team doesn't win games for a long time, it's the coach's fault, not the players.
Well, I've seen it before.
I have too.
I've seen it before.
The challenging thing with Buffalo is that when it comes time to make a prediction for them, we just got to pick like what we think is going to happen. You got to pick a side and stick with it. I don't know where I land on Buffalo yet. I really don't. I don't know if you do either, but I'm kind of teetering. Like they're actually not a terrible roster, but like their schedule's really hard, and I don't know where I'm going to end up. I'm glad I don't have to make that decision tonight. Do you kind of feel the same way about Buffalo that it could go either direction right now?
Yeah, I mean they finished last season with 11 wins.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of wins in the NFL, and we had an offensive coordinator get fired mid-season because they had a rough middle of the season, but then obviously close it very strong. So obviously this team is good. There's been some change. How good are they going to be? I don't 11 wins is still it's a very good season. For them to get better, you're looking at, 12, 13 wins. A regression, I think we'd all be upset, or the Bills would be upset with 10 wins. So yeah, I'm going to hang on the fence for now. Somewhere in between 6 and 12 wins.
Okay, that's a giant window. That's congrats, dude. What a strong opinion. Well, here's the thing: when it matters most, in the divisional round of the playoffs, they lost at home to a better team, Kansas City, better coached, I think, better quarterback. Like at some point, again, the definition of insanity is trying the same thing over and over again. How many times do they have to lose to Cincinnati or Kansas City before you go, yeah, we got to just make a change because we're not getting past Kansas City without better coaching? And it's honest. That sucks, but that's true.
Yep.
Let's talk about Miami. Here's what I said about the Dolphins going into the 2023 NFL season. The Miami Dolphins, they are going to be a playoff team this year. I have them getting the final wild card spot. Injuries, in fact, in general, are the biggest concern for this football team. They already lost Jalen Ramsey, a star corner. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle got to stay healthy. Tua has got to stay healthy. He's going into year 4. Tua, I think, is going to play really well when he's healthy. I think he's going to kind of come out with a vengeance. Going into year 4, he's had a lot of time. He's going into year 2 with Mike McDaniel. I think Tua could have his best year by far in the NFL, but they got to stay healthy. I have Miami going 11-6. I love what they're doing. Tua's out for vengeance, and man, they got a lot of weapons in Miami. So last year, I predicted the Dolphins would go 11-6. I said they would have the final wild card spot. The question for me was, can Tua stay healthy? I said if he does, he's going to have the best year of his career. But I did say, injuries are a massive concern for this team. I think I nailed this prediction top to bottom. I had them at the final wild card spot. They were the number 6 team, not the number 7 seed. But 11-6 is the reality of what happened. I predicted that. And what happened? Injuries were a big problem. And Tua had a career year. Tua led the league in passing. I only own one NFL jersey, Nathan. It's a Tua Tagovailoa jersey. I love Hawaii. I love Hawaiian culture. I love the people. And I love Tua. Tua led the NFL in passing with 4,624 yards. Completed over 69% of his passes, 29 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. They started 5-1. In fact, they had this incredible game, Miami, where they just knocked the doors off of the, I don't even know what the right way to put this.
Ooh.
They annihilated the Denver Broncos. And it was honestly like, I have the film of that. I've been watching it recently. In fact, when I was preparing as an offensive coordinator, I was like studying that game and stealing plays left and right. It's a shame. Like all my ideas, I hope they used them actually. I gave them to that team. They won 70-20 over Denver. And they could have kept scoring actually. They just kind of let up at the end. Would you say I kind of nailed that? I killed this prediction?
Yeah, I think you nailed the prediction. I just think that we were looking at Tua as the guy that was going to be injured, not their entire defense, borderline their entire roster, including their offensive line too, man. They just got obliterated by injuries. And for them to finish 11-6 the way they did, and they had a tough close to the season too, playing not that New York was an excellent team, but a tough defense. You close with New York, Dallas, Baltimore, and then Buffalo. Really tough way to close the season with a team that just had pretty much no gas left in the tank. And if it wasn't the gas in the tank, then they didn't have anybody in the driver's seat. Just because they had nobody left to drive the car, everybody was injured. So that was that was the microcosm of their season, and I think why they fell from being the number 2 seed to all of a sudden dropping to the 6th seed because they lost to the Bills. So it was a tough way it shook out.
Here are some of the names, some of the guys who missed games with injuries. A little guy named Tyreek Hill, you might have heard of him. Tyreek Hill, Xavier Howard, Robert Hunt, Austin Jackson, Tyler Kroft, Raheem Mostert, Emmanuel Ogbah, Jalen Ramsey, Jalen Phillips, Andrew Van Ginkel, Jalen Waddle, Jeff Wilson, Isaiah Wynn, like massive players on the offensive defensive side of the football. Really important pieces missed games last year. Some of them out for the year. It's actually incredible they went 11-6. It actually, for me, the reality of their season, going 11-6, Tua leading the league in passing, and also, Tyreek Hill having 119 catches, 1,799 yards, 13 touchdowns, and Tyreek Hill didn't even play the full season. Like, that's crazy. This team has more left in the tank. They didn't even fully reach their potential. I mean, that's the truth of this team. I think weirdly enough, we should actually view Miami this year as one of the top 3 teams in the AFC. I know that's inflammatory. That's a conversation to be had, but man, like for them to go 11-6 with this many injuries, I can't imagine if they can stay healthy for a full year, how good they're going to be.
Yeah. I don't think it's inflammatory to say, because that offense is so talented. But the problem is that defense, some of those injuries were season ending, and not only were they season ending, they can borderline end up being career ending just because that rehab process can be so difficult. So for Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips, your Achilles and ACLs respectively, it's going to be very, very tough for those guys to come back and make an impact this year. And if they do, that would be so amazing to see. But you need Ramsey to stay healthy. You need Holland to stay healthy to kind of keep this team together. Jordan Brooks, I believe they picked up Jordan Poyer as well. Another guy who I believe from Buffalo is where Jordan Poyer came from, but a guy who can kind of be injured in and out. Like I worry about this defense more than anything. Offense, I'm not worried about I'm not worried at all. But the Dolphins this year need to stack wins early, because you close with Green Bay, the Jets, Houston, San Francisco, Cleveland, and then the Jets again. So you at Cleveland, at the Jets, your last 2 games. If you don't stack wins early against the Jacksonvilles, the Seattles, the Tennessees, New England, we're going to have another situation like they did last year, where all of a sudden these games at the end of the year really, really mean something, and there's no resting the starters.
Bradley Chubb didn't even play a full year, had 11 sacks, played in 16 games. That's not terrible, but 11 sacks. And Jalen Phillips played in 8 games, half a season, a little less than half a season, had 6.5 sacks. He's looking at probably 12.5 to 13 sacks if he plays a full year. It's just unfortunate that injuries, really put a hamper in this team's season. I can only imagine what this team would look like with a healthy group of guys all year. I want to say something that I really admire about the Dolphins. If you look at their running game, the Dolphins had, I think, the most balanced distribution of carries between. I mean, I love love what they did with the running game. Raheem Mostert,
Mm-hmm.
1,000 yards rushing. Devin Achane, 800 yards rushing. Jeff Wilson, before he got hurt, had a ton of carries. I mean, they were really, Savon Ahmed, I mean, I really, there were guys, they were trying to really evenly distribute the football. And what they did, even going into the year, man, I pointed out, like, they spent like, I want to say it was like $6.7 million, something like that, on 4 running backs, split evenly, roughly evenly between 4 guys. It's like, that is how you build a running game in today's NFL. You don't pay one guy $15 million. You pay a couple guys $2 million, and $2 million 4 times is about $8 million on your running back room. And then all of them get a pretty even distribution of carries. If one guy gets hurt, next man up. That's what they did in Miami. It was awesome. I love to see it.
I loved to see the split carries, but if we're being honest, if Raheem Mostert didn't go down, we weren't going to see the full power of Devin Achane. And if Salvon Ahmed didn't go down, we weren't going to see the full power of Salvon. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't necessarily by choice. It was, hey, like, we got dudes that are nicked up and dinged up. Like, we have to spread these carries around, so we don't have much of a choice. Now, Raheem Mostert coming over from the Niners, a guy who I want to say was in his 6th or 7th year in the NFL, for him to pop all of a sudden, that's pretty shocking. To hit on Devin Achane and have him all of a sudden be a superstar, right? Only needs a couple carries and he's electric. That was pretty shocking as well. So I don't think that that's the best way to run to get your backfield going, as far as, spreading a few million around here and there. I still think you need to have your bell cow and then maybe supplement it with a great draft pick, kind of like a Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. Hopefully Jahmyr Gibbs gets healthy here. So yeah, I'd push back against that's how you need to build it, how you need to build your running back room. I think they kind of lucked into it, or perhaps schemed into it, but then they went ahead and drafted Jalen Wright as well, and that dude's a 4.3 cat out of Tennessee, so they just keep getting faster.
Think about this. Raheem Mostert was in year 9.
9?
A running back in year 9 had 1,000 yards rushing and 18 touchdown runs. And out of nowhere, by the way. Like, I mean, he had 891 yards the year before in 2022, but like, he's never had a year like that. To have a career year in year 9 is unbelievable, man. I really, plus another 3 receiving touchdowns. So he had 21 touchdowns in year 9. What?
Yeah, it was, and that's what I'm saying. Like that, again, I don't want to say lucked into, because obviously Mostert's working hard and McDaniels sees it within him. McDaniels, having been with the Niners, he had exposure to Mostert already, knew that he had some, extreme and immense talent and ability. So I don't want to call it luck, but that's not something that you're typically going to find. And then again, walking into A-Chain, that's not something that you're going to typically find either.
They got to start 5-0. They have to. They got to take care of business against Buffalo week 2. Here's their first 5 games. Jacksonville.
You have to beat Buffalo at home. To beat Buffalo at home.
Jacksonville week 1, Buffalo week 2, both games at home. Then at Seattle week 3, Tennessee week 4, and then at New England week 5. They got to start 5-0. Like, I know Buffalo's not awful. I know Jacksonville's going to be better, but if you're going to be what you reach your potential as a team, you got to take care of business and beat solid football teams your first 2 weeks handily. Then you got a bye week. Then you play Indy. Got to win that game. Arizona. I really think you got to start like 6-7-0 in Miami to really accomplish your goals. Because you're right. The back half of the year, it's Rams, Green Bay, New York, Houston, 49ers, Browns, New York again with the Jets. Like, that's a lot of really, really tough games back to back to back to back to back. So you got to take care of business early on in your season. You have to.
This team needs so bad to stay healthy, especially on that defensive side. And of course, Tua needs to stay upright for this team to be successful. They've also got the greatest wide receiver in NFL history, Odell Beckham Jr., on the roster now. I'm kidding. But, adding him doesn't hurt. He can be like we talked about last year with the Ravens. It's not like he did anything spectacular, but he showed up and made a few big plays when Lamar Jackson needed him to. And if that's all the Dolphins need him to do, that's great. He can still run. He's one of the prettiest catchers of the football I've ever seen, which is kind of one of the only ways to describe how everything he does is so beautiful, from a route running technique to catching the football perspective. Just gets me going. but he's on the back end of his prime, and fortunately, he's got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle to maybe help leave him open a little bit.
Yeah, it's not this linear to like say, hey, all the attention is going to go to Jalen Waddle and OBJ. It's going to leave, or it's going to go to Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, excuse me, and you're going to get a lot of one-on-ones with OBJ. But that, to some degree, is true. I mean, it's going to give him better matchups. I think Odell against your number 3 corners, I like that matchup a lot.
I love that matchup.
It's going to happen often. And so I wonder, here's the problem. I've been waiting for Odell to have a good year and kind of, buck the trend and buck the narrative for a long time, that I don't have any confidence. I'm not going to I have no reason to put faith in Odell Beckham Jr. I've been waiting and waiting and waiting. So I'd be pleasantly surprised if he turns out to be kind of a sleeper hit for them, but I'm not going to bet on that. I just don't have, no. I've been burned so many times. I thought he was going to be awesome with the Ravens. I thought he was going to be awesome every time. Like we see him go to the Browns, the Ravens, and I've been waiting and waiting. It just never quite happened. And so I'm kind of over putting any money or putting any kind of hope into Odell Beckham Jr., but I'm peacefully hoping to see him do well.
I think, if he comes out with 30 to 40 catches, 600 yards, 3 touchdowns, I think you'll look back, or we'll look at it and be like, that was a perfect season. He filled a perfect need for the Dolphins. But to me, that's all we can expect. Like you said, he's not having a 1,500 yard, 13 touchdown year like the OBJ of old. Again, if he can just be the guy to have consistent hands, bring a little bit of veteran leadership. He won a Super Bowl with the Rams, run until the wheels fall off. He can have a positive impact on the Dolphins. And he's in Miami. He gets to relax. It's better for his old body.
I got to say, and this is a weird thing to point out, but being left-handed really hurts Tua. When you watch him, I think everyone kind of goes, it looks weird. And you're not used to it. When you flip the film of Tua, you're like, oh, that's Drew Brees. It's so funny how when you watch him throw right-handed, when you flip, you take the camera angle and you flip it, you can do that in editing software. And it's like, oh, yeah, he's great. It's so funny how your brain, when you see it, the way you're used to watching a right-handed guy quarterback throw, you're like, oh, he's incredible. I think Tua is unbelievable. I mean, I'm super biased. I love him. I'm an open fan of Tua. I really want to see Tua do it again this year. And I don't know if people still doubt Tua. If they do, I'd kind of like that to go away. But I'm excited for Tua to impress a lot of people again this year and do really, really well. Was he? He got a massive contract. I don't know that I would have given him that much money, but that's the NFL today. That's quarterbacks and the quarterback market. But I really do believe it too. I want to make that very clear. I think he's an outstanding quarterback. He led the league in passing last year. That's not an accident. It doesn't just happen. And he did it at times with injuries at the receiving corps. So I just think Tua deserves some respect, and I'm hoping he does it again this year and makes people kind of, anyone who still doubts him, shut up a little bit and be quiet.
It looks like I can't talk the rest of the show. I want to see him, when the chips are down, win a football game. When things aren't in his favor, win the football game. To me, Tua's a guy where he needs things trending in the right direction for him to be successful. And again, when he's upright, when he's protected, he delivers the ball just as good as anybody in this league. But I would love to see it every once in a while, just a game-breaking ability, which to me he doesn't have, and it's why I doubt Tua. It's not that he can't, make the throws that need to be made. It's just, to me, he doesn't have that game-breaking ability. He can't make that run on third down like Josh Allen and Pat Mahomes can do. We've seen him struggle to launch that ball deep to Tyreek Hill and hit him in stride, right? And is that a little bit nitpicky? For sure. But to me, I don't see the game breaker that can get you over the hump against a team like Baltimore, against a team like Cincinnati late in the year where, or in the playoffs where you just have to find a way to win. I don't feel like Tua has that in his DNA.
You look at the losses last year for Miami, at Buffalo, at Philadelphia, Kansas City twice. They did lose to Tennessee. That's an outlier. But then Baltimore and Buffalo again. They lost to Buffalo twice. They lost to Baltimore. The point is they lost to really good football teams. And a lot of their wins are against lesser teams. And the kind of narrative that's developing in Miami is they can't beat good football teams, unfortunately. And then you look at the way that their final 3 games of the year, they lost at Baltimore 56-19, week 17. Week 18, they lose at home to Buffalo by a touchdown. And then in the playoffs, they lose to Kansas City at Kansas City in January in the cold, 26-7. And so, man, the knock against Miami, you actually brought it up. I don't know you even meant to, but it's that they can't win big games in big moments. And
Yeah.
that's the last thing they got to prove, in my opinion, is, hey, how do you do it against really good teams? Now, when you look at their schedule, they're going to have opportunities this year to shut that narrative down. Again, at Green Bay, week 13, week 14, the Jets, week 15 at Houston, week 16, 49ers, week 17 at Cleveland, week 18 at the Jets. I mean, they're going to have opportunities. Those final 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games are going to be a challenge. If they go 5-1 in their final 6 games of the year, that narrative is done forever. But if they go 2-4, that casts a lot of doubt.
If they go into Cleveland and they win in December, I will actually be quiet. To me, not to say that that's the game that's going to define their season, but a lot of these teams in the AFC, at least the top tier teams, they play in the cold.
Yeah.
Wherever you're going in the playoffs, you got to go to Kansas City, you got to go to Cincinnati, you might have to go to Buffalo, you might have to go to MetLife. Like, it's just, you're playing in the cold. And can you do it? I don't know.
Well, also their offense, right? It's a finesse offense. It's the truth about it, right? You're throwing the football a ton.
It's physical. Let's be real. Does it look finesse on the perimeter with Tyreek Hill and Waddle? Yes, but that run game is physical. They're hitting you in the mouth. They're double teaming. They're moving up to the backers. That's how you get guys like Mostert and like A-Chain to have those touchdowns, because they're moving people on the line.
I guess I appreciate the pushback. And part of why you're on the show, by the way, is because I need somebody to disagree with me and push back when I'm wrong. And a lot of the stuff the Dolphins do is frankly like the veer offense. It's what used to be the wing T or the triple option. They just do it from a different set. When I was designing an offense for high school football, I was stealing so much from the Dolphins because it's a wing T offense from the spread. You know, that you start in a different spot, but you put guys in motion. It ends up having an H back as a lead blocker. The best play I loved that I stole from the Dolphins was a jet action toss where the jet motion guy becomes your lead blocker in the alley and you toss to the running back. And it gave you a look where it's very rare in offenses in high school where you're running to the side the running back starts on. Usually the running back goes across the formation. So if the running back's on the left, you're going to run right. It was one of the rare plays where you put a guy jet motion, he's your lead blocker in the alley, you toss that same direction. It was incredible. And I saw the Dolphins do that and was like, I got to steal that. Yeah. And I love the Dolphins offense. I guess you're right. I guess what I'm trying to say is it's not just finesse, but at the end of the day, can Tua throw in January in Kansas City? Can he throw in December on the lake in Cleveland, December 29th? Can he throw January 5th in New York against the Jets? That's what I'm trying to say.
It's cold, baby.
Dude, I don't know if it's finesse, but I played a game in Wenatchee, Oregon, or in Wenatchee, Washington, my final high school game. I was dropping dimes and it was like trying to throw a brick. I mean, it was just bouncing off my receiver's hands. Now, that's not a shade to them. It's catching the football, throwing the football for 500 yards in the cold is just really hard. It's a different ball game.
Yeah,
and the strengths of Miami, the way they throw the football, does that work as well in Cleveland, December 29th, in New York, January 15th or January 5th, in Kansas City in the wild card round? I don't know, man. It didn't last year. And we'll see if it happens this year. The season's going to be defined by the final 6 games for the Dolphins. Green Bay, New York twice, Houston, 49ers, Cleveland. If they go 4-2 in that stretch, they're going to get a ton of respect. And that narrative about them not winning big games is going to shut down forever. But if they go 2-4, it's pretty damning and going to be a problem.
Yep. You're going to look at it like you did the past couple of years, right? Real strong start and you fade to the finish. Granted, last year was more injury related. The year previous was just, maybe some kinks. Mike McDaniel's first year. But yeah, if you have those problems late in the season again, I don't think that narrative is going to go away. And I know that you just paid Tua a lot of money. I'm not firing Mike McDaniel. I'm moving on from I'm moving on from Tua from my seat before I move on from Mike McDaniel. So that'll be interesting.
Well, given the money they gave Tua, given the coach they have, neither one's going anywhere. And so
no.
The truth is, we're going to learn, is Miami a fun team that scores a lot of points and makes noise and loses every year? or are they actually a legit contender? And that's what
The
this
East
year is
Coast
going to
Cowboys.
determine.
East Coast Cowboys, baby.
I can't wait. Cowboys coming up. I can't wait to talk about them. Now, before we go to the NFC East, let's talk about the final AFC East team, the Patriots. Here's what I said of the Patriots going into the 2023 NFL season. The Patriots, I believe, will go 9-8 this year. They added offensive coordinator Bill O'Brien. That's awesome. To me, Mac Jones, the third-year quarterback in New England, has a lot to prove. I have no reason to bet on Mac Jones and say, Mac Jones is going to have a great year. He's going to be amazing. I'm hopeful of that. I hope him and Bill O'Brien are fantastic together, and I hope that things are great. But the Patriots, I have going 9-8. Like I said, there's so many unknowns here, and Bill Belichick in recent years hasn't given me a reason to trust him or believe in him anymore. Not that he's not a great coach, not that he hasn't won a lot of Super Bowls in the past, but what has he done recently? He's been underwhelming.
Let's make this a 2-second segment.
Yeah, let's go quick. So I had the Patriots going. I predicted the New England Patriots would go 9-8. They added Bill O'Brien as offensive coordinator. Mac Jones, I said, has a lot to prove going into the year. And I even said, like, Bill Belichick hasn't given me a reason to believe in him recently. And the reality of what happened to the Patriots, they went 4-13. It was worse than I expected. You know, the 4 wins were the Jets, the Bills, Pittsburgh, and Denver. I was really disappointed that the Patriots couldn't take advantage of the Aaron Rodgers injury. I thought they were going to be a team on the bubble, and if there was an injury in their division, they could maybe take a step forward and take advantage of that. Similar to like what Pittsburgh did with Cincinnati's injury to Joe Burrow, right? If a quarterback in your division gets hurt, maybe you can step up and steal a spot in that division. Even with Aaron Rodgers getting hurt, they were a far worse team than the Jets, who went 4-13. And Mac Jones' career fell apart, man. He had 10 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Bill O'Brien didn't work. He's now head coach of Boston College. In fact, we're doing an episode on Thursday, and it's going to be about the Patriots. We're going to talk about, I got some clips from Tom Brady's Patriots Hall of Fame speech. I got some clips from Damian Harris and also from Mac Jones, quarterback coach, talking about what happened to Mac Jones. So we're going to have a conversation in depth later this week about the Patriots, but what do you make of the Patriots season last year? I don't have a lot to say. It was an awful end to the Bill Belichick era. And I'm curious what your take is.
Yeah, I thought that you had Mac Jones, a guy who was, to me, proved capable of winning games in the NFL. Now, I don't think he was a superstar by any means, but he was a guy who could, again, deliver the football well. He could read a defense. The loss, obviously, of Josh McDaniels kind of really hurt his career. But to me, the biggest problem was the defense was still playing strong, playing well. But you left Mac Jones out there with nothing. And all due respect to my Portland guy, Kendrick Bourne, all due respect to Treylon Burks, a former first-round pick, there was not a lot on that offense for Mac Jones to work with. And I think that it was just so poorly managed between we're starting Mac Jones. Okay, now we're starting Bailey Zappi. Now we got the crowd calling for Bailey Zappi. We got people calling for Mac Jones's head, and just the immense pressure that he was put under without really having any sort of support going into that season, to me was incredibly shocking. Like, they went out and paid Juju Smith-Schuster to be a number one wide receiver, right? And maybe not a number one wide receiver, but to help fill that wide receiver room. And I just...
Let me protect you from the audience first before I respond to that, because Treylon Burks, I think you slipped up. You said Treylon Burks. I think you meant maybe Tyquan Thornton, the second round pick.
Yes, Tyquan Thornton. He was supposed to be potentially a first round pick, kind of fell a little bit, ended up resulting in a less than ideal receiver. He was a burner, couldn't really run a lot of routes.
I think what's disappointing about this team, and what you're alluding to, is the lack of help around Mac Jones. I wholeheartedly agree. They had Ezekiel Elliott as their leading rusher, a dinosaur. And then their leading receiver was Demario Douglas, a 6th round pick rookie wide receiver. That's a great, awesome moment for Demario Douglas to be leading receiver in the NFL as a rookie. Like, that's really cool, but that shouldn't be your leading receiver. I mean, they just didn't have weapons around Mac Jones, and that's the truth. It's frustrating and disappointing what happened around Mac Jones. This was the 3rd worst offense in the NFL by the numbers. I mean, that's horrific. some of that's Mac Jones, some of that's the talent around him, some of that's coaching. Um, Mac Jones didn't play after week 12. He got benched. And so it was the downfall of a rookie quarterback. I would really argue and push back and say it was Bill Belichick not supporting his young quarterback enough, both emotionally and with talent around him and with coaches. The way they handled Mac Jones top to bottom was inappropriate to me. And so
Yeah.
Mac Jones wears that. You take accountability for your losses and what you fall short with. But I would argue from the outside looking in, they didn't do shit to help that young kid prepare and succeed. And we saw this year 4-13 was Bill Belichick's ego, in my opinion. And we learned. I was always one of the guys saying like, "Hey, it's Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. They're both the reason why they win Super Bowls." But I think we really learned after Tom Brady left. Nah, man, it was Tom Brady like way more than we thought.
Yeah, I think that Tom Brady, it shows you how much he was able to do offensively, especially when we saw some similar things where we didn't want to spend first round picks on, offensive talent on a frequent basis. It was very, very a defensive focus culture. So, yeah, when Tom Brady left, you kind of lost Tom Brady and Josh McDaniels for what it's worth. When those guys left, you kind of lost your offensive voice. And I don't think that void was ever filled.
I look at the Patriots this year and am really concerned. They were 4-13 last year. I don't know that it's much better this year. I think the division got better. They play Cincinnati to start the year, Seattle, then the Jets, the 49ers, Miami, Houston, Jacksonville, Jets again, Tennessee, Chicago, Rams, Miami. This might be like a 1-10 team starting the year. Like for real. It's horrifying, their record. Their offensive line has been awful in training camp. They got annihilated by the Eagles today in practice. I
Yeah.
mean, we're looking at a team that may not have a win at the bye week, week 14. Maybe they're 1-13, but like, man, every game they play and they don't have the better quarterback. They don't have a better coach. They don't have. I don't know what you're supposed to be impressed by in New England. It's going to be abysmal, I think, actually this year for the Patriots.
Yeah.
I don't see a lot of winnable games for them. In fact, every team I see play the Patriots, I go, that's a win, that's a win, that's a win. Like for the
Yeah.
other team. So have you looked at their schedule? It's kind of crazy. Like after Seattle, like there's almost no winnable games to start the year for them till like
Yeah,
their bye week.
to me, it's less about the schedule for these guys and more about just the talent that's on the roster. I think that's where you have to start. I don't think that they have the guys to go head to head, especially offensively, to go out and beat these other teams. And again, it's no disrespect to these other cats. Again, these guys are NFL players. They are very, very real and they're very good at what they do. I just don't think that they have all the pieces to win football games on a consistent basis. I thought they did a great job getting some sneaky draft picks as far as Javon Baker and who's my guy from University of Washington?
Jalen Polk.
Jalen Polk, right? So to me, those are two great picks, two wide receivers who I think can make a difference. I don't know if it's enough to make a difference this year, unfortunately. And of course, you've just got the question mark of not just a new coaching staff, but a new quarterback. And it sounds like when you got four quarterbacks, you don't have a quarterback at all. Between Brissett, Drake May, Bailey Zappi, Joe Milton III, I don't feel super confident that either of those guys are going to win you a football game that you need to. Jacoby has obviously proved that he can win football games in the NFL, and he can win with New England specifically. The run game wasn't strong. Ramondre Stevenson's more of a receiver than he is a running back. At least that's how they'd used him the previous years. But I am curious with Alex Van Pelt now as their offensive coordinator. He came from the Browns. Maybe gives you a little bit of insight into what Stefanski-esque offense we're going to see. Heavy run, play action, one route running down the backside. I'm not really sure what his flavor is, but that will be interesting to see. He drafted Drake May. It sounds like he's gonna have to sit for at least a year.
They had a top 10 defense last year. I mean, they're not going to be awful on defense.
Always got a great defense.
But the offense is going to be a huge limiting factor. The offensive line specifically is really bad. Jacoby Brissett's going to be kind of a tackling dummy at times. The thing, I can't remember who said this. It was somebody, I think somebody who is respected and I think played quarterback to some degree. I think maybe it's Chase Daniel. I'm not sure, but someone recently I saw said Bailey Zappi shouldn't be in that building because he's taking away reps from Joe Milton and Drake May, and I kind of agree with that. Bailey Zappi, I don't know the benefit of having him in that locker room is unless you're just planning on if Jacoby Brissett gets hurt, you're not going to either Joe Milton or Drake May, and then the truth is Bailey Zappi maybe he's QB number 2, but I don't get the benefit of having him in that room. I think Joe Milton's really talented and hopefully your future, and so is Drake May. So I guess Drake May is your future, but you're hoping one of those two guys becomes a huge playmaker for you. I don't know what potential Bailey Zappi really has. I don't know why they're keeping him. Go ahead.
I'm just saying he could be a guy that ends up being cut, right? On Hard Knocks, it always gives you a little bit of an insight into what's happening as far as, when it comes time to start the season, you got to get down to the 53-man roster. You've got your cuts, and then you add a few guys back for practice squad. It could very well be that he ends up being a guy that gets cut, and then another team perhaps picks him up to be a backup on their team. But yeah, again, it's very real that he does not make the cut for this team. There's no loyalty, I think, to him from a guy like Van Pelt. Well, again, new offensive coordinator, and maybe Gerard Mayo is, just going to let him go.
Let me cut you off there, though. It's that I don't know that Bailey Zappi, he's a practice squad guy. He's a guy you keep around to learn and prepare. And then if he knows your system and you can use him like week 13, a couple of guys get hurt, you pull him off the bench, he's around the team. Like I see the value in having him around. He should not be getting reps in training camp. Like the amount of time you have to teach and work with Joe Milton and Drake May is so limited already. You can't, split the reps with a quarterback who's not going to play for you. It doesn't make sense. Yeah. And I just really think I think he's probably QB number 4 and shouldn't be taking any valuable reps from either the young guys you're trying to train and develop.
I got a question for you. So week 4, San Francisco, Fred Warner comes off the edge or comes from somewhere like he does, and he rocks Jacoby Brissett's world, borderline knocks him out. Maybe he's out for the year. We don't know.
Yeah.
Are you putting in Bailey Zappi, or are you putting either Drake May or Joe Milton in the fire and saying, hey, now's your time?
I honestly put Joe Milton out there before I put Drake May, simply because you got to manage his confidence. And I don't think any quarterback that plays for New England this year is being given a true chance to succeed, in my opinion. Given the offensive line, given the weapons they have,
I second that.
You're setting up a young quarterback to fail horribly, Drake May, if you put him out there. It's bad news. And so the honest answer is that's why you keep Bailey Zappi, is to he's truly your backup. Maybe not on the depth chart, maybe not publicly, but I'm not putting Drake May in there to throw him to the wolves and let him get killed, especially against the 49ers. Like, dude, man. So yeah, I think honestly, I guess that's the argument for keeping Drake May or for keeping Bailey Zappi, is that he's actually your backup. I think we're on the same page that putting Drake May out there when he doesn't look ready and the team around him isn't going to help him, everyone's losing. It's bad news. In fact, if Drake May doesn't play at all this year, that's good for Drake May's health of his career, in my opinion.
Yeah, I could see that.
I think I see like 4 wins max. I think we're looking at another 4-13 season. Do you kind of agree with the Patriots?
Yeah, I agree. And we're going to see something similar where that defense is still playing at a high level. Again, you've still got Gerard Mayo, a guy who had been in the building. You elevated DeMarcus Covington, who was the former D-line coach. I think we're going to see a strong defense again. Maybe not top 10, but somewhere, in that top 12 to 13 teams. And that offense is just going to be abysmal.
Let's talk about the NFC East. Here's what I said about the Philadelphia Eagles going into the 2023 NFL season. I have the Philadelphia Eagles going 12-5 this year. Last year, they were 13-4. I have them losing one more game than last year, but still being the best team in the NFC. Philly's absolutely loaded. And one thing I love that they did, they lost a running back, they brought in another one. They lost a defensive tackle, they brought in another one. They found replacements for players they lost. Everything they lost, they found a good starter to replace that guy, if not better or younger or cheaper. And so I think Philly is by far the best team in the NFC. They are a team that's got a potential to go to another Super Bowl, actually. I have a lot of confidence in them. One thing that could slow them down early is they had to bring in 2 new coordinators because defensive coordinator Jonathan Gannon went to be the head coach in Arizona. Shane Steichen, the former offensive coordinator, went to be the coach of Indy. Regardless, they've got a better coach and a better quarterback than Dallas. They're going to win their division for the second year in a row, which would be the first time anyone's done that since 2004. I've got a lot of confidence in Philly. 12-5 to me is a compliment, not a. What I don't want to hear from Philly, why do you have us losing one more game than last year? Because last year and this year are not the same. It's okay, but you're going to be a great football team with a shot at a Super Bowl. I had the Eagles going 12-5 last year. It was a team that, in my opinion, reloaded, replacing a lot of talent they'd lost in the offseason. I believe they were going to win their division. I also thought they were going to have the same record as the Cowboys. But a question mark for me was their new coordinators on the offensive and defensive side of the football. The reality of Philly, they went 11-6, so I was a win off. They didn't win their division. They were second in their division, but they did have the same record as Dallas, who also went 11-6. This is a team that fell apart in the second half of the year. They lost 5 of the last 6 after starting 10-1. Ultimately, they fired Brian Johnson, their offensive coordinator, and Sean Desai, their defensive coordinator. It's a team that had the 26th best defense and the 8th best offense in football. What do you make of the Eagles last year?
Man, what a confusing team with.
Dude, don't fucking mute it. Just you're fine. We got to tell everyone. Some commenter was like, Nathan, you're breathing real heavy in the microphone. So Nathan decided to mute himself every time I'm talking. You're fine, dog. It's all good. You're fine.
Not every
You're
time.
Fine.
To be clear. Man, what was I even saying? Yeah, just what a weird team to only go 11-6. There's so much more talent and potential on the roster, which is why we ended up seeing the offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator get fired. We saw a little bit of, I don't know if you want to call it turmoil, but a little bit of an unhappy house between Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni at times last year. So it just sounds like, the captains of the ship weren't moving in the same direction, weren't trying to guide everybody in the same direction, and it resulted in just some really inconsistent play. No identity on offense, no identity on defense, and really just out-talenting people, which was incredibly impressive in and of itself. So certainly weird season. Really feels like they underachieved with how much they had on their roster.
They had 2 receivers that had over 1,000 yards receiving, AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. DeAndre Swift ran for over 1,000 yards. Jalen Hurts, 23 touchdown passes, ran for 15 touchdowns, had 19 turnovers on the year too. That's not great. More turnovers than games played, which is bad. I'm curious where really I don't care that much about the reality of the prediction. I mean, I was pretty close and it was what it was. As I look ahead though to Philly, right? Last year is a concerning year because again, like you said, the guys at the top, the decision makers, the movers and shakers in Philadelphia didn't appear to be on the same page. And there appears to be kind of a rift between Nick Sirianni, the head coach, and Jalen Hurts, the quarterback. And I don't know what to make of it. I think you sent me an article the other day. Like there are reports even now that the rift is further growing between Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts. What do you expect from Philly this year? Are they a better team than last year? Do they win the division? I mean, I can't imagine Dallas taking the division from them. I don't think Washington's going to challenge them or the Giants. So I think they do win their division again, but I also don't think they're a Super Bowl contender, it's a weird position to be in.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this team wins the division. I think they're the best team in the division because the division is not very good. But when I look at last year, we know that Nick Sirianni is a walk-around coach, right? He doesn't necessarily have a specialty. He's not a stone-cold offensive brilliant mind like a Mike McDaniels calling the plays. He's not a Bill Belichick or Mike Vrabel or Mike Tomlin calling the defense, right? So last year, when you had Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon, 2 guys who are now head coaches and clearly have the capability to lead teams on Sirianni's behalf, when you didn't have them, again, we saw an inability to get the team moving in the right direction. Now, what I think is great about this year is on the defensive side, you brought in Vic Fangio, a guy who has head coaching experience and can get a defense playing very, very well. We saw that in Denver. Granted, things didn't work out. That defense was still playing very well. And then you brought in Kellen Moore, who to me is a little bit of a question mark. I know that the Chargers kind of make everybody bad, but I was expecting a lot more out of him with Justin Herbert last year and that entire Chargers offense. So I think you've brought in two high-level coaches who will be able to right the ship on Sirianni's behalf. Now, if things don't get better, I'm not really sure what to say because on paper, this roster is so good. They are so talented. I mean, bringing in Saquon Barkley now, like it's do or die time. And I don't want to say Super Bowl or bust, but this team should win their division. They should win a number of playoff games and potentially make it to the NFC Championship. But will they? It just depends on, again, can everybody get going in the right direction again?
Well, I think they'd catch a break because their defense, their division isn't great. The Giants are bad. Washington, I love where they're headed, but they're a ways away from being truly like a contender, and they got a rookie quarterback. I'm not impressed with Dallas. So then the tough games they have this year, they play Green Bay week 1, Atlanta week 2. That's interesting. And then at New Orleans and at Tampa. Weirdly enough, that's actually kind of a tough way to start your year. Like those are teams that are all better than they were last year, in my opinion. They have a bye week. They play Cleveland, then the Giants, then Cincinnati, then Jacksonville. Like I'm actually nervous about this season because the games that are kind of on the fringe for me are like this NFC South games: Atlanta, New Orleans, Tampa, all back to back to back. Those are teams that are better than they were last year and good. And they actually lost to Tampa in the playoffs last year. The Rams are good. Baltimore is good. Dallas is no slouch. The Jaguars, the Bengals, the Browns. Like these are not. I mean, they've won big games. They won a lot of big games last year. So look at their schedule last year. This is not a Dolphins team. They're not the Dolphins that struggled to win big games. They beat the Rams. They beat Miami. They beat Dallas. They beat Buffalo and Kansas City last year. Like this is a team that's won big games before, but they're going to have to do that again this year if they're going to make a playoff game. I think they do. I think this is a playoff team that wins their division. I guess a question mark though with Philly. What's their ceiling? Where does it end for them? Can they get farther than they did last year? Can they actually push into a Super Bowl? I don't know if anyone in the NFC is going to win the Super Bowl this year. I think the AFC is much stronger as a conference. But when you look around the NFC, like where do you think Philly ranks among the best teams in the NFC? There are no 49ers. Maybe they're the third best team in the NFC. Would you agree on that? Who's second if they're not the second best team? Like, what do you make of Philly and their standing in the NFC generally?
Yeah, until otherwise noted, again, from the performance of how this team's going to come together, they're certainly a top 3 team in the NFC. I think that you've got the Niners and the Lions, who I'm going to give the nod as being better than them.
Yeah.
And then follow that up with the Eagles. But I don't think it's far off. Again, this roster is so talented. And if Kellen Moore can dial things up, if Jalen Hurts is a little bit healthier this year, to me, it didn't look like at any point Jalen Hurts was truly healthy last year. If Jalen Hurts is a little bit healthier this year, expect him to be able to attack more of the field throwing the football. You've added Saquon Barkley. You've still got A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert. You've got a killer offensive line. I know that Jason Kelce retired, but you're bringing in Cam Jurgens, who Jason Kelce himself endorses. You've still got Lane Johnson. You've still got Mailata. Now flip it to the defense. Vic Fangio's got to turn this defense around. I'm sorry, the Georgia Bulldogs has to turn them around very, very quickly. You got a lot of guys from that Georgia defense between Keely Ringo, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith Jr. Can all these guys play well together? Get James Bradbury out of there. I can't stand that guy. Darius Slay needs to stay healthy as well on that back end. If they even have a, let's just say, top 15 defense at the worst, I think that this is a 12-win football team at the minimum. So I want to say that they're going to regress, and I've said that a number of times this year, but a regression for them based on the roster that they have is probably 10 or 11 wins.
Well, I really struggle to not look around the NFC and go, like, who's the best quarterback in the NFC? What, Matthew Stafford, probably?
Matthew Stafford.
Is it Kirk? It's not. I wouldn't say it's Jared Goff. Caleb Williams, eventually. Like,
Jordan Love's getting paid like it.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, my point is, like, there's not a standout. The NFC is a weird conference because there's no clear, like, the AFC's got all the best quarterbacks and incredible coaches, and The NFC has got the 49ers with Brock Purdy, and they've got the Lions with Jared Goff, who I like a lot, but he's not a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. My point is that Philadelphia can fail their way to a playoff game, and then they got to win a game or two, and they're in the Super Bowl, like for real. Can they win a Super Bowl? I'm not sure, but the more I think about the NFC and the picture of the NFC, it's going to be probably at the end of the year. The best 4 teams in the NFC are probably going to be Detroit, Atlanta, the 49ers, and Philly. I think they are one of the 4 best teams in the NFC. And
don't sleep on the Rams up there, though.
They'll
Don't
be
sleep
in
on
position,
the Rams.
though. What I'm saying is Philly's going to be in position if they can get hot at the end and win a game or two. They're in the Super Bowl. I mean, it really is that simple if they can win a couple playoff games. I just don't know if I'm so wishy-washy here. I don't know what to make of them. I don't know. I got to make a decision at some point. But I think they're the 3rd best team in the NFC and have a shot at a Super Bowl. The question is, can they get it done when it matters most? Because what they did in the playoffs last year and the way they fell apart at the end of the year generally was just horrifying and cannot happen again.
It was.
To start 10-1 and finish 11-6 is horrifying.
Yeah, I'm on the fence as well, but I think by the time the year starts to roll around, I think we're going to be looking at this Philly team like, oh my goodness. Good morning, good afternoon. They're here on Sundays to whoop your ass. And I think that's what's going to happen. What does concern me is, has Kellen Moore learned to stop abandoning the run game? You've got a dog in Saquon Barkley. Can you commit to it? Can you just let him tote the rock, 15 times a game, supplement him in the pass game, and then deliver the football over the top to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith? So I want to see that from Kellen Moore, and then I want to see Fangio get this defense going in the right direction. Again, Sirianni has now surrounded himself with guys who can lead the men around him so he can be his walk around, vibes guy. But if things aren't going well, I think Sirianni's out the door pretty quick.
They got to run the football, man. You look at the playoff game, they lost 32-9 to Tampa. They ran the ball 15 times. I know they were losing at halftime, 16-9. Like, you can't abandon the run in the second half in a 7-point game. You can't do that. Nope. And they got Saquon Barkley. Like, they're setting themselves up to run the football a lot this year. But you're right, they have to do that. And I think I would actually look at the playoff game last year, the embarrassing playoff loss 32-9 to a 9-8 Buccaneers team, as them not running the football in the second half. And that's why they lost the time of possession battle. That's why they were, they didn't have any crazy turnovers. There wasn't any horrible stuff. It was just them not doing what they needed to me. Sorry, they didn't have a turnover. They didn't have a turnover in their playoff game. They lost 32-9. Like, you ran the ball 15 times.
Play.
That's what happened to me.
They did not play Philly football. Philly brand football, the city of Philadelphia, it's tough. Yeah, you got to play tough football. They did not do that.
You want to talk about the Cowboys?
Nope, but I guess we have to.
Here's what I said about the Dallas Cowboys going into the 2023 NFL season. I believe the Dallas Cowboys will be the number 1 wild card team in the NFC. They will go 12-5. They have a terrifying defense. The Cowboys have a great front seven, a really, really good pass rush. They can make opposing quarterbacks miserable just by hitting them, getting in their face, making them uncomfortable. And when you do that, guess what? The Cowboys have 2 corners who will make you pay if a throw is off target or a little bit late. Trevon Diggs and Stephon Gilmore are there to make you pay. 2 really good corners paired with a great pass rush. I'm a huge believer in the Cowboys defense. They're going to have turnovers. They're going to make people throw interceptions. They're going to get sacks. They're going to make people uncomfortable. I love the Cowboys defense this year. I think the Cowboys are going to be a good team. They're going to win a lot of games this year. But ultimately, Dallas will not reach its potential. Dallas will fall short of what they have potential to become because of their coach, Mike McCarthy, and their quarterback, Dak Prescott. That is why I have the Cowboys going 12-5, not winning their division, and definitely not reaching a Super Bowl. I had the Cowboys going 12-5, finishing second in their division. I had them having the same record as Philly. That actually did happen. But they had a ton of talent, crazy good defense. The problem to me Well, as I said, they're mediocre at coaching quarterback, and this team is ultimately going to fall short of their possibilities and their potential because their coaching quarterback is a limiting factor. To me, that's exactly what happened. The reality is they had the same record as Philly. They went 11-6. They did win their division. They're the fifth best defense in football, but when it mattered most in the wild card round against the Packers, they lost 48-32 in Dallas. Like, that cannot happen. None of your success matters. You go 11-6, you win your division. None of that matters if you fall apart in the playoffs when it matters most. And that's what happened in Dallas. Do you agree with my analysis of their season last year?
Yeah. And we also alluded to it earlier when we were talking about the Dolphins. They don't beat good teams. And that is a limitation of the coach and the quarterback. I more so think the quarterback, because previous to Mike McCarthy, we were seeing similar things with Dak Prescott. Only one playoff win, or does he have two under his belt now? I don't want the comment. I don't want the Cowboy fans to kill me. The bottom line is, late in the season, you lose to Buffalo, you lose to Miami, you lost to San Francisco early, get body bagged by San Francisco earlier in the year. You lost a close one to Philly earlier in the year, but then kind of came back and beat them that second time. It just, I think you got it right.
I don't have a lot to. It's interesting. Like, it's not the story to me is coaching quarterback being the problem. But I want to give respect to CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb had 135 catches for 1,749 yards and 12 touchdowns. Like, CeeDee Lamb had an unbelievable year. 135 catches in an NFL season is crazy. He's waiting on a contract. Tony Pollard ran for over 1,000 yards. Michael Parsons had 14 sacks. Like, I want to just acknowledge, like, the players in Dallas are incredible. They've got a loaded roster, like a ton of talent. I just would argue that the two most important pieces on any football team are coach and quarterback. And I think they got them wrong. And it's just always going to be a limiting factor. I would really like to see, as you look at this year, I'd be so happy to see Dallas represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. I don't think they win that Super Bowl. I think it lose to any number of teams in the AFC that have better quarterbacks and coaches. But Dallas, for so long, has been so close and just keeps underperforming. When you look at their schedule this year, they start on the road at Cleveland. That's a really tough game. New Orleans is going to be better. Then Baltimore. Now they get a break. They play the Giants, excuse me. Then at Pittsburgh, then Detroit, a bye week, then a really tough stretch of at the 49ers, at Atlanta, who's better, then Philly, then Houston. This team's going to get hit in the mouth early on, and they got to win big games. Can they win at Cleveland? Can they beat the 49ers, Atlanta, Philly, Houston, Detroit, Baltimore? Like, I don't know, man. I think we're looking at a team that's a 3-win team after Houston, possibly. I know that's crazy, but like, they got to win big games, and I'm not sure they can. Do you agree with that thought?
Yes, this team got worse. I don't know how else to say it. I just don't see a lot of positive things outside of CeeDee Lamb. I know that CeeDee Lamb's holding out right now, which is never what you want from your star wide receiver. Obviously, he's going to want top of the market money.
When Jerry Jones fumbled that situation, by the way, he said, I'm not too worried about the contract. It's like,
goodness,
you should be, dude.
Doing?
You should be worried about your best player, having a contract and being happy and being at training camp. Can't say that publicly.
And I'd also like to call out the fact that this year that they've got two new coordinators. You've got Brian Schottenheimer, who's kind of been I wouldn't call him a bounce around the league coach, but he's done 2 years here, 2 years there, kind of with a number of teams and some higher offensive coordinator position when he was with the Seattle Seahawks. He was a quarterbacks coach with the Indianapolis Colts, kind of in that Andrew Luck era. So he's got some experience. Maybe he can help whisper to Dak Prescott about some of his faults and get him to a new level. Who knows? But I mean, Ezekiel Elliott's your starting running back again, which is weird. It's funny. We were talking about how Derek Carr, like, does he go back to the Raiders at some point? I mean, that's what we just saw with Ezekiel Elliott. If that's your starting running back, I'm not super confident. Your wide receiver 2 is Brandon Cooks, and I know that he's great in his own right, but he's getting old. Defense, I'm really excited about having Mike Zimmer as a replacement to Dan Quinn. I think that's a pretty good It's a step
Mm-hmm.
down, but certainly not the biggest step down that you could take. I think they're relatively close. So I think the defense will play well again. But man, I just don't see a lot on offense. And I think this is maybe Jerry Jones saying, "Hey, Dak, you got to play out this year. I'm not." He's doing the Bill Belichick to Tom Brady. I'm not going to buy you any new weapons. I wanted you out the door already. Ownership's not letting me do it. But and Jerry Jones is the owner. But you get what I'm saying. They
Yeah.
don't want to surround him with talent. They want to say, Dak Prescott, if you want this money, you got to prove to us that you are the reason that we are winning football games. And he might be, but he's also not winning the big games. So it's kind of a weird dichotomy. But at the end of the day, the roster is just not very good.
I wouldn't say they're bad. I would say they're not great.
It's a middle of the pack roster.
Yeah. And I think they're week 11, they play Houston. After that Houston game, I really think they're like 4-6 or 5-5. I mean, I know that's like, that's a big statement, but it's also, I mean, again, are they better than Detroit? Are they better than the 49ers? Do they have a better quarterback than Atlanta? They've got Atlanta's got their former defensive coordinator. Are they better than Philly? Are they better than Houston? How about the Browns? How about the Ravens? Like, I see a lot of games, and I think they're going to win some of if they go 5-5, after week 11, that means they're going to beat a team like Baltimore or Cleveland, like, because they're probably going to beat Pittsburgh and the Giants. But after that, and maybe New Orleans, right? So that's 3 wins. But to get to even 5-5, you still got to beat a Baltimore, a Cleveland, a Detroit, a 49ers, an Atlanta, a Philly, a Houston. Like, they got to win big games, and I just don't think they can. 4-6 is not crazy after 11 weeks to me.
And not only that, but is that what you want to see from the Dallas Cowboys, America's team? Do you want to see a season that starts anything less than 7-8-0 like they have been the previous year? Some really, really hot starts. Like, that's just 4-6, 5-5 is not going to do it for this fan base. It's not going to do it for Jerry Jones. Something's got to change. I've been calling for Dak Prescott to change since before Mike McCarthy got there. I don't know.
The way we could be wrong is if Dak Prescott plays outstanding. That's the truth. Like, if it's all on him, and it's a prove it year for Dak Prescott. I think what's going to happen is he's going to get tested, and it's going to go poorly. But I'm open to being wrong, and I want to acknowledge the way our prediction here, the way our vision of the Cowboys season going wrong compared to what we expect is Dak Prescott playing outstanding lights out football. And if he does that, they're going to have a great year. But I don't have any confidence in Dak. I've seen it for so long, and it hasn't happened for years. I don't know what's different about this season.
He's a Kirk Cousins type guy. You're going to get some great stats. You're going to get some great numbers. You maybe win a primetime game once every, so often, but in the playoffs, it just hasn't been there. And this has been with rosters that outmatch their opponents, and they for some reason can't find a way to win. I know that they were a couple plays away against Tampa Bay a couple years ago, but just
think of how many.
I don't feel confident, and this isn't. You can call this a lazy take if you want. This isn't based off of stats or anything. This is just based off of what I see on that roster, the coaching staff I see that's put together, and the history that we have with Dak Prescott. I just don't see it. I don't see it.
He's played on so many teams that have had incredible talent around him and not delivered. Think of how many quarterbacks would have killed to play on some of the Cowboys teams he played on. Justin Herbert.
Some of those early
Joe
Cowboy
Burrow.
teams. Ooh.
Oh my gosh, man. Like,
when you had Zeke in his prime. Ooh.
Dude, I just, man, if you put, how big is the gap between Dak Prescott and Gardner Minshew? Like, honestly.
That's a big gap. I know that you love Gardner, but that's a massive gap.
Okay.
Even last year, if you put Minshew on the Cowboys, he's not putting up even close to the numbers that Dak Prescott had.
So let's put Derek Carr on the Cowboys. Are they way better? Or is that about what Dak Prescott is?
No, they're worse.
They're worse than Derek Carr.
I like Derek Carr, but Dak will at least push the ball down the field. I mean, Dak threw for 36 TDs and 4,500 yards. The
What
guy
about
can
Baker?
sling the rock.
Does Baker make the Cowboys
Still not
better?
better.
You don't think
No.
so? Okay,
No.
so you don't disrespect Dak Prescott. You just think there's a limitation there somewhere.
Yeah, there's a limitation somewhere. And like you were saying, I want to be wrong about him. I want him to be able to take that step and really get that team, be that game breaker to take them to the next level. We just haven't seen that. And they are excellent at home, playing on turf in, Jerry's world. But then they go on the road. Sometimes they look a little bit shaky. So,
Although they lost in the playoffs to Green Bay and a quarterback starting in his first season, like to lose to the Jordan Love led Packers, that's a really young roster last year is shameful, man. Like that's what I'm saying, man. Like the problem too, it's not personal. I like Dak Prescott a lot. I love how he carries himself. I like his interviews. The way he conducts himself is awesome. He's a great leader. Like he presents so well. You want to root for him. You want to love him. And I'm so tired of waiting and waiting and waiting. At some point, you got to go, yeah, dude, he's had opportunity after opportunity on great football team after great football team, and he hasn't delivered when it mattered. And that's the honest reality of what's happened with Dak Prescott during his career so far.
Yeah, I mean, again, last year he threw his completion percentage was almost 70. I mean, again, he had an MVP caliber season like he did in 2021. It just shocks me to have that sort of stinker in the playoffs. I don't get it.
Was he second?
I want to be wrong about him. He was
third. He was third behind Tua and Jared Goff.
And I mean, those are two guys that were on lights out offenses. So again, he is a very effective quarterback. There's not many guys like we were just talking about that you can plug into Dallas and actually make that team better. There's just there's something just hasn't quite got them over the hump. That's again the only way I can try and find a way to put it, because to me it doesn't make sense.
Let's talk about the Giants, shall we?
If we have to.
Here's what I said about the New York Giants going into the 2023 NFL season. I believe the New York Giants will go 8-9 this year. Last year they won a playoff game. And I think it's weird to say, but it's true. I think they're a better team than last year that's going to win fewer games than they did last year. They're a better team. They added tight end Darren Waller. It's Daniel Jones in year 2 with Brian Dable. They drafted a speedy receiver, Jalen Hyatt, out of Tennessee. Their left tackle, Andrew Thomas, is a stud. We're going to see pass rusher Kayvon Thibodeau go into year 2. The Giants are a better football team than they were last year. Let's just say that out loud. They're going to be better. However, their schedule is much more difficult. And both things can be true, that they can be a better team than last year and win fewer games. So I had the Giants going 8-9. They added Darren Waller. They drafted Jalen Hyatt. I said it was a better team than last year by a little bit, but they had a much harder schedule. The reality of the Giants, they went 6-11. And it's tough to judge them. Similar to the Jets, actually, another New York team with a quarterback injury. Daniel Jones, their quarterback, only played in 6 games. Towards ACL week 9, he had a neck injury earlier in the season as well. To me, it's a hard year to judge because of that. The couple things that matter to me: Darren Waller, 52 catches, 552 yards, and a touchdown. He retired. Darren Waller, they brought him in. It wasn't great. It wasn't horrible, but he kind of middled out and wasn't what they hoped he would be given the contract they gave him. Jalen Hyatt, 23 catches for 373 yards. Didn't turn out to be a barn burner like I hoped. I thought he was going to stretch the field and be kind of a gadget weapon for them. That didn't really happen. Kayvon Thibodeau did deliver. He had 11.5 sacks, kid out of Oregon. Really developing. As his career gets on, he gets better and better every year. I really like the way Kayvon Thibodeau is developing, but it's not a very interesting team. I regularly will complain with my girlfriend, Molly, like, well, when anything happens around the house, and instead of saying mid, she'll now say, oh, they're like the Giants. Like, they're so boring and they're Wonder Bread white. They're just boring and not interesting. And even their owner, man, like John Mara, like my girlfriend, like, does not like the Giants quarterback Daniel Jones at all. She says he's just the most, like, she says, the least compelling
even
leader.
Even bearded Daniel Jones?
Does he have a beard now?
Yeah, there was a whole thing about him making Kay Adams laugh during an
Oh, that's
interview
so
because
funny.
he's got this beard, looks like this Midwest kind of guy, bucks
Let's see
bales of
it.
hay on the weekends.
Daniel Jones. Yeah, okay, the beard. It's better. It's better. He's still boring fight. Wow, this is so funny. Some of these pictures are hilarious. Like the he does look way better with a beard. He also looks very much like a New York Wall Street finance bro. Like that's his attitude. That's everything about him. He's just the least compelling leader, I think, in football. I'm like, dude, I don't like this guy at all. It's I don't know what to. I don't have anything interesting to say about their season last year. It was just they're not very good. I will say the more I see from Brian Dable, their head coach, the less impressed I am with how he carries himself and how
Mm.
he. I thought in Hard Knocks he was the big loser, man. He's conducting interviews, he's like slouching and looking all weird, and he's making fun of guys running the 40-yard dash. He just comes across horribly. So I the more I see of Brian Dable, the less impressed I am with him. Um, do you have anything meaningful to say about the Giants? I feel like I don't, honestly.
Regarding last year, no. Like we said, it's another year, another team that had an injury to their starting quarterback. So many injuries last year for starting quarterbacks
Yeah.
that the season kind of became a wash. What also didn't help was that offensive line was very, very bad.
Yeah.
Combine that with weapons that are, I think, talented, but still trying to develop and maybe didn't quite find their niche, if you will, or find their role within the team. I don't think ever roles really ever got defined for them outside of Saquon Barkley. So yeah, combination of no quarterback, offensive line was hurt. You're playing with backup quarterbacks. Tommy DeVito, what a fun story that was. Just a wash of a season.
Um, to me, they lost Don Wink Martindale at their defensive coordinator. They mutually parted ways. I think he left angry. I think there was a big division there between him and Brian Dable. That's weird. There's something there that we don't know. And then they replaced him with Shane Bowen, a solid defensive coordinator. Came from
That excites
Tennessee.
me. That
That's a good
excites me.
hire. I really like that. I'm curious what he'll do with what they got in the Giants organization. Um, my early expectations for the Giants are just they're going to be a mediocre team that they're not going to make waves. It's kind of a boring year where they're trying to figure out their quarterback situation. And I think what's going to happen this year is they're going to lose to Cleveland, Cincinnati, Philly, probably Pittsburgh, Dallas, Tampa, Baltimore, Atlanta, Philly again, Indy. Like they're going to lose a lot of games. It's going to be really ugly. And the determination after the year is going to be, hey, we got to get a new quarterback. Daniel Jones isn't cutting it. And whether he gets hurt again or doesn't play well, they're going to walk away feeling like, yeah, in order for us to progress as a franchise, we're going to need a new answer at quarterback.
Yeah, I think that $40 million a year doesn't sound as bad as it used to, given some of these contracts that just came out for a few quarterbacks.
Yeah.
But again, you talked about Shane Bowen coming in as the defensive coordinator from Tennessee. I like the intensity that he's going to bring. They got Brian Burns. They've still got who's the cat on the inside? Dexter Lawrence. You got Kayvon Thibodeau. So you've got a nice front to wreak some havoc on some other opposing quarterbacks. What happens on the back end, I'm not entirely sure. I think that they've got some work to do just in total on that defense. I don't think Jason Pinnock is going to be the free safety that they need as far as somebody to make those run fits with those guys, creating so much space up front, the guys that we just talked about. So defense, I think, will be okay. Again, maybe a top 15 defense, not as abysmal as they were last year. But on offense, they do have Malik Neighbors. Wan'Dale Robinson, I think, is such an interesting player, especially when the ball is in his hands. You've got Devin Singletary. You picked up Allen Robinson. You've still got Isaiah Hodgins and Jalen Hyatt. So you've got a lot of fringe, like wide receiver 2, but maybe more like 3 kind of guys. It's interesting. It's an interesting offense. Daniel Jones, I hope can, use his legs and show some athleticism, but much like what we talked about with Will Levis, if you can't throw the football accurately on a consistent basis, you are going to have problems in the NFL. Daniel Jones is not accurate, and Daniel Jones is not a great decision maker. And I think that's the biggest problem. I know that Daboll maybe didn't look great in Hard Knocks, but I think he's a solid coach. It's just a quarterback that won't get you over the hump.
This is a team. So the draft class this year was incredible. Michael Penix Jr., Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, JJ McCarthy. Like I think you might have had 5 first-round quarterbacks that are all going to hit, which is like you, especially the way they're playing in the preseason. All of them, and they're all in good situations where they're going to have time to develop and be given time to properly become what they need to. Next year's draft class is not the same. You got Cameron Ward, probably going to be the best quarterback. I like Dylan Gabriel. He's going to be really good, but I don't think he's got the size or the arm strength to be what you need in like New York.
It's a weird way to say Quinn Ewers.
So Quinn Ewers is like the third. Yeah, my point is like I don't know who the quarterback is in 2025 for the Giants. Is it Quinn Ewers? Is it Cameron Ward? Is it Daniel Jones? Is it some free agent we can't imagine yet? Or is it someone who just has an incredible one-off year in college football? I don't know. My point is the draft doesn't look as exciting as it was for this year. They didn't draft a quarterback this year. And I don't know that that was the right move. I don't know. I mean, they chose not to draft Michael Penix Jr. They chose not to draft JJ McCarthy. They chose not to draft Bo Nix. And I don't know that that's not going to shoot them in the foot ultimately.
Yeah.
I think quarterback's a huge concern here. And I guess I think they're going to have a bad year. And we're hoping that Daniel Jones can prove his worth is really the question mark this year for the Giants. I'm just not confident that's going to happen at all.
Yeah, that's the weird thing, right? Is we got Daniel Jones. He wants to prove himself too, right? He said, "Okay, I got us to a playoff game a couple of years ago. Got us a playoff win a couple of years ago. Last year, I can come back this year and I can make a difference." But if I'm that Giants organization, how many games do I really want to win? You know?
Yeah.
Like what's that threshold for where I see us getting that next quarterback pick like you're talking about? How many games do I have to lose? How hard do I actually have to tank to get a Cam Ward, a Quinn Ewers, a Dylan Gabriel? What is that going to look like? Again, Daniel Jones is going to want to be successful. Are the Giants, if they have a rough start, going to want him to keep being successful, or give him that opportunity to be successful?
How long can Brian Dable ride the coattails of that playoff game, that appearance? That I think if they have a bad year again, they still keep Brian Dable because I think they're the Giants and they move slowly. But we're getting towards the end of patience. I think it's this year and next year, and if they're not good next year, then it's a problem. But they got to start making progress as an organization, and I don't think this year is going to do that for the Giants.
Yeah, it's tough. He inherited Daniel Jones, so I think he gets credit for, making Daniel Jones what he is or what he was a couple of years ago. So I think that the clock is more on Daniel Jones than it is on Brian Daboll. Yeah. And if you don't have a quarterback who can distribute the football, get the football to the guys that you've drafted, then you've got some problems. So I think that Daniel Jones is more on the hot seat, if you will, than Daboll. I think if this is one of those rare situations where I think the quarterback finds their way out the door first, you take some dead cap. The Broncos did it with Russell Wilson. Now they're in a better situation. You might have to do that with Daniel Jones.
I think we're going to see Drew Lock play a lot for the Giants this year. He's a backup quarterback in New York. Do you have anything to add?
Also, not a great decision maker.
No.
And not an accurate passer. So,
yeah, I think we agree. We're headed towards a bad year for the Giants with a lot of question marks and not a lot to feel good about, unfortunately, for Giants fans.
No, and that off-season Hard Knocks was kind of a microcosm of it. Things just felt so uncomfortable the entire time. At no point was I was like, oh, like they got some momentum here. Things are looking good. Like there was just, to me, uncomfortability across the board. So
I want to say I do really respect Joe Shane, their GM for the Giants. I think he's a principled guy. He makes good decisions. He makes decisions based on value. I would say it's conservative, but I really actually think that the way he conducts business is very professional. Now, does he come across like a great leader? Does he come across as a bit goofy? Great leader, no. Goofy, yes. I don't know what to make of that, but I think the way he explains his decision making process is one I would agree with. I think it's worth saying. Like, I don't want to bash the Giants organization and not acknowledge that I actually like the direction Joe Shane has gone with a couple of key decisions and doing his best, inheriting kind of a tough, bad situation for the Giants.
Yeah. Do you remember why they didn't move up in the draft? I feel like I remember seeing a piece as to why they didn't. I wasn't sure if they just couldn't get a deal done, or because that became very clear that they were already trying to move on from Daniel Jones.
Well, it's because they realized, like, hey, they're not going to go at the quarterback they want in the top. They couldn't move up high enough to go get a quarterback. The Patriots weren't going to move, and so they knew the quarterbacks they wanted were going to be gone within the first couple picks. And I think it's strange they didn't. Let me double check, but I think that what they picked 6th, and Michael Penix Jr. was the 8th pick. Is that accurate? It sounds right to me.
Yeah, and that was kind of going to be my question. Is yes, you took Neighbors. To me, it sounds like you're setting him up for the next guy. And I don't know what that bridge program looks like for whoever they're going to bring in at quarterback, but that was a move to get the best possible athlete in the door, a guy who has potential to be a number 1 wide receiver, and then follow that up eventually with a quarterback.
Well, it's weirdly loyal to Daniel Jones too, to say, look, we're going to get you help. And we'll see if that pays off. It's certainly like they've given Daniel Jones enough support that you get a real fair look at him this year, in my opinion. Like, this is not the Patriots where they don't have any weapons and they haven't done anything. Like, there's enough that you can, if the year goes bad for Daniel Jones, you can say, look, they certainly did their job to support him as best they could, and Daniel Jones didn't get it done. It wasn't a lack of support around him. They removed that excuse by drafting Neighbors.
I think that now, let's not compare Pat Mahomes to Daniel Jones, but I think this receiving core that they currently have is better than what Pat was playing with last year.
Yeah.
Again, you'd need Neighbors to kind of be that Rashee Rice, 1-to-1 as far as rookies kind of growing into their roles. But then you had some gadget guys, and Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton, if he's healthy, Jalen Hyatt, burner over the top like Marquez Valdez-Scantling was, Isaiah Hodgins, kind of a secure hands, kind of every once in a while guy you can go to like Noah Gray was. Obviously, you don't have Travis Kelce at tight end, but it's not like there's not weapons. And I want Giants fans to know that. There's some guys who can make plays. Can we get to the ball? Can we get the ball to them? We'll find out.
You know who I love? It's on their 4th string. You ever heard the name Bryce Ford Wheaton?
I have not.
Dude, go back and watch his West Virginia tape. He just made plays, man. I think he played in the XFL too, if I remember correctly. But he was awesome at West Virginia, dude.
I only watch one West Virginia tape, and that's Tavon Austin.
Dude, that
he just retired today, I'm pretty sure.
He did. It's that highlight tape is legendary, man. You can tell him that when the hell in fact the heat is on. Oh, dude, it's amazing. You want to talk about Washington?
Yeah, let's talk about Washington, because this is probably the only team in the division that I'm truly excited for.
Here's what I said about the Washington Commanders going into the 2023 NFL season. I believe the Washington Commanders will go 7-10 this year. I am rooting really hard for their offensive coordinator, Eric Bieniemy, and their quarterback, Sam Howell. They both have a lot to prove. And another thing that's really unlucky for Washington, they don't have a bye until week 14. So no rest until week 14. That's brutal. I tried to find more than 7 wins, and 7 wins felt generous given that we don't know if the Cowboys are going to rest their starters week 18. It's a brutal schedule for Washington, if I'm totally honest. They play 9 teams that I predict are going to make the playoffs this year. That's an insane level of really good football teams Washington plays this year. I have them going 2-7 against those teams. That's a brutal, brutal schedule. I'm rooting hard for Washington. I like Sam Howell, but 7-10 is a realistic expectation for me, and that's my prediction. So I had the Washington Commanders going 7-10 last year. They had a tough schedule. The 7 wins I had for them was Arizona, Chicago, Atlanta, the Giants, the Rams, the Jets, and Dallas. I was a bit overzealous. They went 4-13. And the big question mark to me was Eric Bieniemy, their offensive coordinator. Eric Bieniemy made a conscious decision to leave the safety, security, the good situation of Kansas City to go be the offensive coordinator in Washington. And he was really kind of betting the farm, saying, I'm going to do well and get a job somewhere else. It didn't work. He didn't have a great offense. They have the 24th best offense in football. Their quarterback, Sam Howell, had 21 touchdowns and 21 interceptions. The only really positive thing going for their offense last year was Terry McLaurin having 79 catches, 1,002 yards receiving, and 4 touchdowns.
Scary Terry.
It was the worst defense in football, which is part of why they brought in Dan Quinn to be their head coach. I really, the only thing I want to focus on here is that I just think Eric Bieniemy made a bad decision by leaving Kansas City. I thought he could have really enjoyed years and years and years of coaching Patrick Mahomes and winning Super Bowls. And I think he got a bit greedy and wanted to make a name for himself rather than enjoying a good situation. And I really encourage people, before we make a big move, I'm a guy who's made a lot of big moves in my life. I've moved to Hawaii twice. I've switched jobs. I've done everything you can imagine, basically. And I've learned to recognize a good thing when you have it and to enjoy it and really cherish that. I think Eric Bieniemy left a really, really good thing with Kansas City and a good, stable career and a good life. For what? To go be the offensive coordinator now at UCLA? Like, I just don't get it at all. Do you have any thoughts on Washington last year? Anything you want to add to what I said?
Yeah, I think Washington was kind of an interesting team. They lost their last, I don't know how many games, maybe 8 games in a row, which was kind of tough for the Commanders. When you're throwing 21 picks, it's really, really hard to score any points at all. And I think, talking about Eric Bieniemy here, I think that he thought, Rivera was on the hot seat, which he was. And I think he thought he was going to kind of grandfather his way into that head coaching role. And obviously with the change in ownership, they just completely cleaned house. And I really do think that his intent wasn't necessarily to be the offensive coordinator, but to finally get that head coaching role that he'd been interviewing for a number of years. Obviously now things have taken a further step back, further regressed for him, no longer being in the NFL. But I think that maybe going back to college will be good for him, see personnel for a couple of years, and then maybe get a head coaching job. And then like a Harbaugh, you have a good advantage to see the guys who are out there. You have a couple good draft classes, and then boom, maybe your team's good, right?
I just want to push back. Point. I want to say coaching in college is not a better job than the NFL. The recruiting obligations, the NIL stuff, and he's never going to get a job again as good as what he had. The situation he had, coaching the best quarterback ever to live, Patrick Mahomes, working with Andy Reid, winning Super Bowls. I really fundamentally will always believe he made a terrible decision by leaving Kansas City and not appreciating what he had. And I think ego steps in and says, I want to get ahead. I want to be head coach. And I think you have to learn to, I've learned a lot about coaching the last month. It's a lot of egos everywhere, dude. And I just think his ego got in the way of his health of his career and possibly the joy he could have had. Like, I just don't think it's a bad gig to be the number 2 guy behind Andy Reid working with Patrick Mahomes. And I think think he made a misstep by leaving.
I think that might be good for some people, but then there's other people who just have more ambition. We've seen there are tons of coaches that go from the coordinator position and flop. How many of the Belichick guys or the really just the Belichick guys that kind of come out and flop, right? It's coaching in the NFL is hard, and you don't always get it right the first time. And I truthfully believe that maybe the situation would have been cupcake and delicious staying in Kansas City. But if all the credit's going to Pat, all the credit's going to Andy Reid, and yes, you're getting some, but not all of it. You talked about the ego. I think it was more of him challenging himself and looking for that opportunity to continue to grow his own career, so that maybe one day he can pass on knowledge that maybe Andy Reid gave to him, and he can start his own coaching tree. So I think about legacy in particular for Eric Bieniemy. And again, it would have been so great to just hang out, but sometimes you got to go through a little adversity. You got to realize the grass isn't always greener. So you got to go out there and fertilize it and water it yourself until it becomes green. So while he may be taking a little bit of a step back, I think that there's still an opportunity for him to return to the NFL eventually. Maybe finally get that coveted head coaching job.
Do you think, so this is something we might have to cut out. I don't know. I'm here asking questions. I wonder though if he felt maybe there was a racial component to him not getting hired as a head coach, and felt like, hey, this is unfair. And so I want to go do everything I can to make sure like I'm putting myself in a position to put myself ahead. And it's certainly like, unfortunately, like when you coach in Kansas City and you're coaching Patrick Mahomes and with Andy Reid, like they're always going to assume like they're winning because of Mahomes and Reid, not because of you. And by going to Washington, he was going out on a limb saying, look, man, I'm going to do what I can. And if we win, it's because of me now. Finally, I'm going to get the credit deserved. And maybe there was some feeling of responsibility like, hey, there's a component that is outside of my control, why I'm not getting hired. Let me just put it in my control,
Yeah.
put it in my hands, and answer this question forever. Where if I don't get hired and I do good, at least I know. At least I can say to myself and look in the mirror and say I did everything I could to get myself ahead. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. You're absolutely right. That's what he was doing. The unfortunate part is you leave and Kansas City wins a Super Bowl, and the coaching job that you've done has led to 21 interceptions. Now, is that just Sam Howell? I mean, I know that he threw for close to 4,000 yards, but
There's no better way to show how great of a coach you are than
validate.
leave and have the team you left win a Super Bowl.
It certainly did not validate his is it Andy Reid? Is it Pat? Is it me?
His
Certainly
claim.
did not go in his favor. But yeah, I'll just wrap it with, I applaud Bieniemy for continuing to push for more and for growth and for challenge. Best of luck to him.
Yeah. I'm so excited for Washington this year. Like it's one of the teams. This division sucks, man. Like I'm not. I mean, sucks in like the storylines. The Giants are not interesting to me. The Cowboys have Dak Prescott and a coach I'm not interested in. The Eagles are really good, but they've got question marks at their leadership position. Washington actually ends up being by far the most interesting team in the NFC East. I can't wait to see what their young quarterback does, man. What do you make of Washington? Are you excited to watch them this year like I am?
I'm very excited to watch Washington, and I think that they did a great job putting that staff together. Dan Quinn did. He brought his boy Joe Witt with him, their defensive passing game coordinator, so you can expect that defense to still be very, very aggressive. That's a typical Dan Quinn defense. And then they also made the sneaky hire of Cliff Kingsbury. I think the intent there was to, try and get Caleb Williams, but I'll tell you what, Jaden Daniels is nice. Very excited for them this year.
A couple games I've got circled for Washington that are interesting. They play Tennessee, Chicago, and Carolina. 3 teams with young quarterbacks: Bryce Young, Will Levis, and Caleb Williams. 3 teams that are in very similar positions at the quarterback spot. That's where it's a fair fight. Like when you play Baltimore or Cleveland, it's brutal. I think they're going to have a chance to beat the Giants twice. I think they've got a better quarterback than the Giants and a better offense all around than the Giants have, and a much better defensive coordinator. Like I think that, man, I really like the Washington's chances of beating the Giants twice. But it's the other games where you're playing another team with a similar quarterback situation that I find really fascinating. I don't see a lot of wins here for Washington. I see like New Orleans is tough, Atlanta's tough, Cincinnati's tough, Baltimore, Cleveland are tough games, Tampa's a brutal game. But I see a lot of games where you might have some really competitive losses and a couple wins. And I can't wait to see those games where they're playing, again, Chicago, Tennessee, and Carolina, the 3 got circled. I'm like, how does young quarterback on young quarterback look? And how does Jaden Daniels compare to like a Will Levis or a Bryce Young or Caleb Williams?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun this year. And you look at the supporting cast that they've been able to put around him. They brought in Austin Eckler, who maybe isn't the best runner of the football, but certainly can benefit you in the screen game and just be a veteran presence about winning. With Brian Robinson in there still at running back, you've got my boy Scary Terry. I know he is going to light it up with Jaden Daniels. Get him on your fantasy team. Get that duo on your fantasy team, maybe. Why not get a little fancy with it? You got Jahan Dotson and Zach Ertz too. So they've done some work to try and get him some weapons. It's just how quickly does this come together? I do think that this could be a 7-win team. Like I truthfully do. Like Dan Quinn is a leader. He gets guys moving in the right direction. We know that people were calling for McCarthy to be fired and him to be elevated to the head coach. So he did some solid work in Atlanta. Now he's finally got himself a quarterback who I think can sling the rock. he can focus on the defense. He'll have Cliff Kingsbury worrying about the offense. Say what you want about his time in Arizona, but I think we saw Kyler Murray play relatively well for a couple years underneath Cliff Kingsbury. This team could be sneaky good. And that defense, they've got Clellan Ferrell up front, Dante Fowler, Jonathan Allen. Like, I think they've got some serious potential to surprise teams. I don't think they're going to be the best team, but you can't show up and count them as a win. You have got to come with your A game.
I found eight winnable games already. Tampa, 2 wins against the Giants, Pittsburgh, Tennessee, the Saints, Arizona, and Carolina. That would be 8 wins if they win all those games. Now, winnable games doesn't mean you're going to win those games, but you win a couple winnable games. And then if you beat a team you shouldn't, like a Dallas or I think Chicago's really good. If you can pull off one against Chicago or Baltimore, like, man, if you can steal a win against a good team, you're talking about a 8-win season for the Washington Commanders. And that's like a really successful first year with a rookie quarterback and a new head coach.
Yeah, and I think that you've got Cleveland at home, which is great. And then you've got Philly at home late in the season. You could catch Philly off guard if things are moving in the right direction for you. So again, I don't think they're an amazing team, but you cannot sleep on them when you show up to play.
Well, they're going to have a really, really talented young quarterback. Like, arguably, I think, dude, Jaden Daniels is the most under the radar quarterback. It's kind of crazy. I think Caleb Williams is going to probably win Rookie of the Year. Jaden Daniels is going to be put in a lot of positions to succeed. Like, for real. I mean, what I've seen in the preseason, some of the designs they got, like the RPO he ran for a touchdown the other day, I was like, oh, that's beautiful, dude. It's awesome. And I just think remember when Deshaun Watson had like this incredible rookie year and everyone's like, whoa, where'd that come from? And then he got hurt and it kind of ruined his momentum.
Yeah.
I think we're seeing a Jaden Daniels rookie season that kind of comes out of nowhere and people go, whoa, he's way better than I thought. The weapons are good. Scary Terry. Like, let's look at their roster.
Scary Terry.
Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, Luke McCaffrey, Zach Ertz, De'Ami Brown, Jamison Crowder, Olamide Zaccheaus. Jamison Crowder is no slouch. I know he's a veteran guy. He's not like a big household name, but he's actually a pretty solid veteran receiver. They've got some solid weapons around Jaden Daniels.
This was wild to me, and I think it happened today. They signed Martavis Bryant. Does anyone remember Martavis Bryant from the Steelers? Probably I don't know, maybe 2017, 2018. He was lighting it up with Antonio Brown, and obviously I can't remember what exactly held him out. It was a pretty big deal why he wasn't in the league and could never really find his footing. I know Dallas signed him late last year, but to see him on the Commanders roster, if he finds any kind of form again, watch out.
He's 32 years old, 6'4", has not played in the NFL in 6 years.
It's been 6 years?
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. It felt like 3 for me. Nah, I'm not bought in on that anymore.
I don't know. We'll see. I don't know why. I mean, Deshaun Jackson was playing I don't know. I have an open mind. And maybe not playing for 6 years means your body's really healthy, actually. Like, you never know.
Yeah, and that very well could be it. And, if I would assume he stayed in some relatively strong shape. Again, I don't know what kept him out of the league, so I don't want to, endorse what may have been something that's very, very ugly. But I think that Martavis Bryant, in the most optimistic, positive world, could be an elite level weapon.
On top of Terry McLaurin, on top of Jahan Dotson, who I love. I mean, Brian Robinson Jr., Austin Eckler is their number 2 running back. Marcus Mariota is their backup, which is actually great, I think, for Jaden Daniels. They actually have a really similar playing style, too. I just really like what they got going on offense in Washington. And then their defense, man, they've got an incredible, incredible head coach calling the defense, Dan Quinn, with a lot of talent, honestly, up front in the front seven. I just think, actually, like, the more I think about it and look at their schedule, their roster, their talented quarterback, I'm not shocked. I wouldn't be shocked if this is a 9-win football team in Washington. I know that's crazy to say, but
I'd be shocked.
8 wins? Can they beat? I think they can beat Dallas. Like, I really do. And then you're looking at 9 wins. You steal a game against Dallas, a team that Dan Quinn knows really well.
That's fair. That's
I think
fair.
Jaden Daniels, man, his ability to run and create stuff outside the pocket is going to really help a lot.
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating, dude. I think this could be, I'm not saying will be, I'm saying
Right.
could be. They have potential to win 9 games, which is kind of crazy.
You could argue that potential. I worry about the consistency for the team again. New coaches all around, new quarterback, a lot of young cats out there. That consistency will need to come through, and they'll probably drop a game that they should win. Right? There's a very real chance that they lose to New Orleans, that they get snuck up on by Carolina, just because it's so hard to win in the NFL. So,
But could this
um,
be the Texans of last year? Remember, no one thought CJ
no,
Stroud and um, D'Amico Ryans were going to win games either, and they won a playoff game. So like I don't know, man. I really think that it's interesting. I really think like this is a team that is flying under the radar tremendously and has a lot more
hmm
talent than people realize. And I think the quarterback, man, is going to shock people. He's a real deal. He's a franchise quarterback in my opinion. And I just remember watching Deshaun Watson break onto the scene his rookie year and have like an incredible run before he got hurt towards like ACL. I think a similar thing could happen with Jaden Daniels, where people go like, "Where did that come from?" And I'm like, "Dude, he won the Heisman. He's incredible. I promise." Like, I really think he could surprise a lot of people and play very well from the jump.
Jaden Daniels, I need you to look at me here. Please protect yourself.
Mm.
Don't go outside the pocket. Don't go running crazy trying to get the extra yards. Slide. Please get out of bounds. Until you've put on a few more LBs, a little bit more muscle, please just protect yourself. Thank you.
Um, I think that's it, man. That's all I got for today. You feel good about today's show?
The truthful answer is yes. I feel like the show is great. We're awesome. But some of these teams, man, I just not a fan of. So we'll see how this year shakes out. But I feel great. Yes.
Yeah. We got to sit down. I don't know what you're going to do. What I do, I go through, I get every team's schedule, I print it out, and I literally one at a time pick every single game throughout the year. It's like 256 games or whatever it is, right? And in that
hmm
process, you get surprised sometimes. Like, I can't believe that going through that process. Hey, I have the Raiders winning 7 games, and I can't believe that. Or like, I have the Chiefs. Like, you're surprised by what you find when you go through that process. Um, and I think I'm going to do it. You're welcome to do it with me, but I'm going to pick every game this year and come up with concrete numbers for every NFL team. It takes a lot of time. It's actually a lot of work. But it's always fun to like, and then you're like, you double check. You're like, well, is that accurate? Like, could I actually give a win back to Tampa? But then I got to take a win away from someone else or add a win somewhere here. Like, you
Right.
really have to. There's only so many wins to go around. You have to have an accurate number. But it's playing that game for me is really fun, actually.
Yeah. Tell you what I'll do. I'll let you do that, and then I'll just pass judgment, and I'll
I
tell
I,
you whether it's good or not.
I think that
No,
is great.
I would actually love to do that exercise as well. That's something I've never done before, so I'm interested to see how I, navigate it.
Dude, it's shockingly hard to manage because you have to add up all your wins and be like, hey, because there's you literally like a number. I used to know it was 16 games. I don't remember it anymore. With 17 now, but like you'll see a lot of people in the media do predictions, and they're like the number. If you add up all the win totals, it's like there's not that many wins to go around the NFL. So it's like there's I don't know how you do the math.
544, 17 games for 32 teams. Actually, that does not make sense.
No, because only
What?
one can be
Yeah,
won. So it's actually
cut
17
that.
times 16.
Cut
I
that.
think.
People can't know I can't do math. We got to cut that.
That's okay. No, I think that's because I had the same thing. There's 272 wins to go around
That makes more sense. Just
because it's
slash that bad boy
17
in half.
times 16. So if your win totals, if you add up your math and like, hey, there's, the Cowboys have 10, the Eagles have 11, the Bengals have 13, like you add them all up and the number is 274, somewhere along the way, you did your math wrong. It's always like a fun exercise, but, I don't know. Well, let's leave it here. It's literally 11:47 p.m. Molly made brownies. I'm going to cuddle Molly and go to bed. I love you, man.
I'm on
I
my
really
way.
appreciate you. I'm going to have brownies and go to bed. This will come out tomorrow at some point. Dude, I want to just publicly acknowledge so the audience can hear, like, you're doing a really good job. And it's really fun for me. And having a person to go back and forth with. And challenge me when I get stuff wrong. It's actually like, I think, really good for the show. And you're a guy, we don't talk about your qualifications very much. You played receiver at a Division I level. You've worked in the NFL before in a way that I don't want to say, I don't want to out your spot in your former job, but you've been around like high level NFL players. And I just really, really, I'm really glad to have you. You're doing a great job and you bring a lot of value to the show that I want to just say publicly and acknowledge.
Thank you. I'm really grateful for that. And again, grateful for you giving me this platform that I think we've talked about for a couple of years now of me like really trying to start, getting into podcasting. So super grateful for you. Also, I do drop down into the comments of the videos. I see you guys showing support for Zac and I doing this together. I'm super grateful for all of you. I'm very critical. I've still got my old ways. I love to turn on the tape and watch film. I'm very critical of myself. So I'm going to try and be better. I know I'm doing well. I'm going to try and be better so that Zac and I can deliver you guys the best possible product week in and week out. So I'm so thankful for you guys, dealing with me these last couple of weeks. And I look forward to being in front of you guys more.
Let's acknowledge one more thing, kind of housekeeping. You're going to be in tier 2 of the fantasy football leagues. So SOS had a fantasy football league last year, Patreon exclusive. This year we've got not 1, not 2, but 3 tiers, and it's going to be relegation style. The top 3 or the top 4 teams move up, the bottom 4 move down. And so we're going to have a lot of people doing fantasy football from Patreon. Believe it or not, tier 2 filled up immediately. And then tier 3, it's full. I just haven't sent out the invites yet to people, but we're going to have 3 fantasy football leagues from Patreon. I'm tempted to like randomize the picks and then just put myself at the first pick for all 3 leagues. I can fuck everybody. I don't think I'm actually going to do that, but I want to.
Who would you take?
Josh Jacobs.
Round 1, pick 1?
Yep.
Josh Jacobs?
Yep.
I mean, I did say he was going to lead the league in rushing, so I can't hate on it, but also
look around the league of the running backs. Who's Saquon Barkley?
Is it a PPR league?
Yeah.
What kind of league am I? It's a PPR?
PPR.
Okay. I don't know about that then, brother.
Yeah.
All due respect.
Who's the number 1 running back in the NFL? Honestly, like you look around.
I don't know,
Nick
but
Chubb?
I'm probably not taking a running back in the first round.
But then who do you pick? Quarterback? I would take a running back. Running backs are like Christian McCaffrey last year is so valuable, but he won't be this year because he's gonna have injuries and not. So I don't know what to do. I really don't know who the top running back in fantasy is going to be this year. I have no idea.
It's going to be hard to say.
Yeah. Anyway, let's leave it here. I love you, man. Thanks for your time. I really appreciate you, and great job today.